Good afternoon, everyone. A special welcome to those of you that are joining us in person, as well as those of you that are joining us virtually. For those in attendance, I would ask you to ensure that your communication devices are either shut off or on vibrate while council is in session. It's Wednesday, August the 30th, 2023. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It's through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together, as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those future generations to come. Council, the first item on the agenda is a declaration of pecuniary interest. I remind you, if you have one, to please declare it at the proper time. So this evening we have a delegation. I'd like to welcome Crispin Colvin, Aaron McLean for the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, and the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. It's a pleasure to be here. Karen's handing out some of our, I'll nickname it propaganda. I'll be getting to that in a while. So first of all, for those who don't know me, I'm Crispin Colvin, and I'm a director for Plympton and Middlesex counties, and I'm also a vice president on the OFA board. I think I went right. Sorry. Okay. Great with technology. The piece of paper you got just now is a snapshot of Lambton County, and Lambton County farmlands are all class 1, 2, and 3, which is actually some of the most productive land in the country. One of the reasons it makes Lambton so attractive is also makes it an area that food processing facilities want to establish here. So it's kind of recognized as a bit of an agri-food hub. And that's a mutually beneficial relationship between your communities and the other communities in the county, because we have a shared appreciation of the agri-food sector and local food. And the picture that I've got there is just a few of the processors that are in the Lambton area. These processors also recognize something else about Lambton County, and that's the quality and the reliability that the Lambton County farmers have to offer. They wouldn't locate in this area if they didn't feel that we as producers were not a reliable source of quality products. But we're not without challenges along the way, because only 2% of the population in Ontario are farmers. In fact, 2% of the population of Canada is that. So we have fewer farms now and fewer farmers, but they tend to be a lot larger, even though the average size in Lambton County is around 273 acres. But farm prices are also impacting agriculture as well. Lambton County prices range anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 per acre. In Middlesex, where I live, farm just sold recently for $45,000 an acre. That makes it tough for young people to get into business. So some people have looked at the idea of smaller farms, subdividing 50 or 100 acre farms into 50-acre parcels or smaller. But there's a tremendous downside to that. And that's why some counties have remained at the 100-acre minimum size. And that's because smaller lots tend to become estate lots. People will build a larger house on it because they can afford it. And the price per acre doesn't actually change. So even though you may have a 50-acre farm, it's probably going to sell for that $35,000, $40,000 an acre, whereas a 100-acre farm might sell for the 30 to 35. Proportionally, it gets out of whack. So smaller farms aren't necessarily an answer to getting more people into agriculture. One of the things we're very adamant about at the OFA is the protection of farmland. Over 52% of the prime soils in Canada are in Ontario. And yet Ontario has less than 5% of its land that is farmland. We're a pretty small number. 2% of the population working on 5% of the land, and yet our contribution to the GDP of the province is $47 billion. that rivals the auto sector. In fact, I've been told, and I have to look it up, so I'm not sure that this is an accurate statement, but supposedly we produce more GDP than the auto sector. But again, I'm not 100% sure without having looking it up. So you may know better than I do. You're in the business, I know. But one of the things that's happening though is today we're losing 319 acres a day to uses other than agriculture. That can be industrial, it can be commercial, it can be housing, it can be taken out of production for any number of reasons. Could be a gravel pit. That's something that we can't sustain. We cannot continue to sustain that. And that's one of the reasons when we go to do presentations such as this to any municipality of any size, whether it's the City of London, whether I'm talking to people from the City of Toronto, as I was at AMO, we say that you have to build up and not out. Stay within your boundaries if at all possible. Even if it's smaller communities like Strathroy, I said to them, build 3- and 4-story walk-ups instead of going out, because we have to start thinking about our land use. Land is a finite resource. Once we lose it, it's gone forever. And I used the Talbotville Ford plant as an example, if anybody had ever driven by it. Once Ford left and they tore the building down, it became a parking lot or a weed patch. There was nothing there, nothing grew. Now it's starting to be repurposed, but that's the point of once land is out of production, it's done. It doesn't come back. But there are some good things too. I mean, you think of Diageo, the distiller that makes Crown Royal, they're coming to St. Clair Township in Amherstburg. They're putting a lot of money and they'll create a lot of jobs, but they're going here because we have the products they can use. And that's one of the benefits. So there are things, we're not saying at the OFA, don't build, we don't want housing, we don't want industry, but we need to think about how we do it and where we put it. And that's the key. So as I said, we look at the statistic of 319 acres a day that we're losing. And we have 11.8 million acres of arable land in Ontario. At the rate of loss, if it doesn't change, we will have no longer any farmland in 101 years. That's kind of a frightening thought. And if you think of it, in 25 or 30 years, it could well mean that we may have to import food in Ontario to feed our population. Our population is growing, our land base is dwindling. We can't have it both ways. And if you think of what happens with food nationalism, India, for example, has banned the export of rice products because they're keeping it for themselves. When the COVID issue hit, Western European nations that were developing the vaccine and producing it, Belgium in particular, decided that they didn't want to export the vaccine until their own populations were vaccinated. This will happen with food if we're not careful. It's happening now, as I say, with India. So it's something to be well conscious of. So to try and put it into perspective, what is 319 acres? And it's on that sheet if you flip it over, but just to give you a quick idea, 797 hockey pits, over 1 million bottles of wine, and over 23 million apples. So that's a pretty substantial amount of food or wine, among other things. I didn't realize that we had it this fancy. Karen's got me so well programmed that I'm looking down here instead of up there. I should be letting you run this. You know? He does an excellent job. You know, if it wasn't for Karen, I wouldn't even be able to do this. He makes me look good. So we have some areas where we can work together though. And I think that's really important. And one of the things when I was at the recent AMO conference with your mayor, among others, I had the opportunity to speak to a lot of different municipal and provincial politicians and staff. And we talked about the shared goals that we have, whether it's infrastructure, the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, concerns from education to healthcare. In fact, we had an email come through to the OFA just the other day from Huron County because a doctor is leaving the county to pursue education at another level. And they're now saying, can we help find doctors? And that's a challenge. It's makes it difficult also from your perspective because people locate in communities because of a number of reasons. It'll be churches, it'll be recreation, it'll be employment, education, and healthcare. And if you start to lose any one of those, you start to lose your ability to attract employees and employment for your area. So we want to work with you to meet supply chain challenges, to meet infrastructure challenges, and to strengthen the labor force that we all need. So as I say it, when I was at the AMO conference, infrastructure was certainly one of the top topics, roads and bridges in particular. And that's important to us as it is to any community, because if we don't have good roads and bridges and good transportation, our products don't get to market. If my product doesn't get to market, I don't get paid. It's that simple. And I don't like that. So some of the things that we're looking at are getting more broadband internet. Farming is far more technical now. I like to tell the story a bit about when my son does most of the crops now. My wife and I do a small cow-calf operation of 20 head. My son's tractor has computers in it, and he can tell me how many seeds per acre he's putting in the ground. When I was doing the seeding, when I planted my soybeans, I did some math on the back of a bag, and I figured, okay, it's X number of pounds per acre. And I'd stop and look after I'd done an acre and think, well, it looks about right. So that's why we need things like broadband. The technology has improved. You don't do math on the back of a bag anymore like I did and hope that you're right. I usually ended up planting far more heavily than I needed to, I can tell you. Also, access to natural gas is important because of the greenhouse industry, because of hogs and other animals that require heating or cooling, as the case may be. So we need access to an affordable energy source. So we continue to lobby at the provincial level and at the federal level to try and reduce the burden on municipalities to provide the upgrades to the infrastructure that you need and that we need, because it's expensive. There's a lot of projects that have been put on the shelf and need to be done. And I think probably the best example is when I look at Quebec at some of the things where they've got bridges that literally collapse because they've put them off and put them off and put them off. And we can only afford to do that for so long. So we lobby on behalf of you, but also on behalf of ourselves, because we have the same common interest. We also do some different projects, collaborative initiatives. This particular initiative, Hands to Table, is being done with Middlesex County as well. And it's in partnership with the Middlesex Economic Development Group, Sarnia-Lambton Economic Partnership, the Sarnia-Lambton Tourism as well. And what it does, this project, is it brings restaurants and producers together to show the story of what's on your plate. So we work with one or two local restaurants and with local producers, and they access whether it's local beef, local poultry, vegetables, and so on, and they produce a menu based on the local food in the region. And it's indicating to people how much is available in the area. It shows you what's available in this region and what's served by local restaurants. So we have a few things that are available to you. And I know that Karen would be more than happy to help with this part if you need anything. We've got what's called the Agriculture Matters Guide for municipal councillors and staff. And the idea behind that is to help understand some of the key issues in the agricultural business, what we face at the municipal level. And what they do, they're just a quick one-page outline of what the issue is, why it matters to farmers, and how we can work together to try and solve some of these issues. There's also the Grow Ag page on our website. There are a lot of several resources online that are available to you, and that either Karen and I can put you in touch with them if you so wish. And all of these are available to anybody. It's not secretive by any stretch. There's agri-food strategies, there's mapping projects that have been done, some guidance documents, and there are also some studies that some communities have done, and I can't name any off the top of my head, unfortunately, but that they've done that may be useful and can be applied in other communities such as yours. So as I say, we're a bit of an economic powerhouse, even though we're small in numbers. But we encourage all the municipal leaders to recognize some of the long-term benefits of investing in the agri-food sector. It boosts economic growth and prosperity for the province and for your region and your local community. So what I'm asking is that instead of letting industry and commercial growth be a priority in the county's success and in your local success, look at food production, measure food and its export value. So as we look to the issue of housing, we also have to keep in mind that people coming to Ontario need to eat. So I encourage you to make food and food production a priority, because it too often gets put down as second place. And when we look at housing, we look at industry, we look at commercial business. We don't think of food. And part of that is because North Americans are spoiled. We've always had lots of food. And we always think we have lots of land. In fact, at AMO, I sat beside a woman, a counselor from Oakville, and we got talking, and I explained to her some of the 319 acres and what it does to Ontario and what it could do to food production. She was shocked. She had no idea. And that's the kind of message we try to get out, and we can get out with your help. So that's basically the quick presentation. Thank you very much for having us. And if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them or defer them to Karen.
Well, thank you very much, Crispin, and thank you, Karen, both for coming today. I've seen you and heard part of your presentation before, but we have some new counselors with us today that's joined us for this term. So I think it's always good to have that educational aspect as well. I did like the idea of the promotion of the broadband and natural gas. Those are two things that we're trying to get more of within our municipality. And we realize how important it is, not only for our farmers, but for all of our residents as well. Farming is very big within our community, as you're aware, and it's one of our most important industries. We have approximately 3 minutes left. So Council, do you have any questions for Ms. Councilor Bojan?
Sure, thank you. I just have one quick thing. Just thank you for the presentation again. And I know you guys put on a great presentation for candidates meeting last year as well. There's a pretty good presentation. I can't remember her name, but she had a great presentation along the same lines. I know we recently directed staff to create terms of reference for an agricultural advisory committee for Wyoming. So I imagine through that committee, there could be an opportunity to loop OFA and LFA in as well on an ongoing basis for collaboration. Because like the mayor said, we're certainly aware of it and passionate.
That's great, actually. And I find Lambton County and Lambton councils tend to be far more progressive in terms of having agricultural advisory committees than Middlesex. So I will launch a challenge.
Yeah, do it.
Because they're very much needed. I think that's one of the things. In fact, London, and I used to sit on one in London. COVID, they had an agricultural advisory committee. And at least they had the interest to find out more about agriculture, which I thought was pretty good from the city of its size.
That's all I had though. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Councilor Rodriguez.
Thank you. And thank you, Crispin, for coming. And I too enjoyed the presentation at the candidates meeting last year as well. I guess I would look to you for ways that we can form either some sort of plan or policies or promotional material when it comes to agritourism and value-added services. I think they're tremendously important, as I heard in that meeting last year. My apologies, I have allergies too. I think they're extremely important in helping sustain the viability of our agricultural land, but help promote the importance as well of agriculture in our communities. So I don't know what kind of resources or anything you have available, but I look forward to chatting with you about that.
One of the things that Crispin had up on his screen was Hands to Table.
Yeah.
And so that program again is joint with Middlesex, but the restaurant that is featured in Lambton County this year, I believe, is in Wyoming. It's called Local. And the farm that supplies them is their chicken. I can't remember off the top of my head who the producer is, but there's another example. They've got new videos out, and the promotion, I believe, is going for the month of September. So they'll be Facebook and social media posts, things like that to promote obviously the restaurant as well as other Middlesex. If you know Middlesex, they are featuring Arva flour mills this year. So Arva, their flour supplier, wheat supplier is actually Arva Grain, which is across the road on number 4 there. So I haven't seen the video yet, but I was looking forward to that because I think they were gonna film it while the wheat was being harvested and then hauled to the flour mill to be milled obviously into flour and other baked products. So I think that's a really good promotional item for agritourism in both Lambton and Middlesex. So there's one example of what we're supporting as well.
Yeah. I remember, I think last year they did it with Copper Flats.
Yes, so that's the bison, right?
Yeah, it was very well done.
Yeah, so
Well, and I
Yeah,
just see one
new video.
recently for the Dockers.
the stone pickers?
Snow pickers.
Yeah.
I recently just saw one, I don't know who did it, but it was well done as well.
I saw that.
It's currently circulating.
Yeah, I saw that too, actually.
Oh, Ontario Park, thank you, that's right.
Yeah. So there's a few is food to fork to food. I forget what they're
Field
called.
forks.
Field forks, that's it. There's a number of them out there that are quite well done. One of my husband is an ag specialist with Agris. He works out of Glencoe and one of his customers is like a watermelon vegetable crop producer, and they've got a new one out on him. So he's supplying some local, and of course, that's what they are trying to promote is buying local and things like that. So there's lots of good stuff out on social media right now. And
I think we have some resources on agritourism, and I'll see that I'll talk to our office and get some sent out. That's one of the things that we try to promote is sort of secondary activities on the farm that will bring in income and get people learning about the farm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy.
No, I just thoroughly enjoy your presentation. You were here a few years back over at the Wyoming Fair Building, and it was quite an event there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I just wish everybody would pay more attention. So.
Me too. Thank you.
Ben Clavin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Love OFA. Love what you folks do. Keep up the good work. Yes, you were here. I believe it was after for new candidates for Lambton County, and I was at the Fair Building, and it was very passionate. The loss of farmland is a big deal. And so it was really resonated very clearly through that presentation. And it created quite an impact for sure. Yeah, just carry on with what you're doing, and we'll be looking for your work out there for sure. Thank you.
Well, Ben.
Thank you. I could speak all night on this topic for sure, but I'm not.
Thank you.
I don't particularly agree with everything, but certainly the agriculture sector is a big thing here in our municipality. But there is some challenges here with us as a council municipality, trying to keep up these roads and stuff that you speak of and bridges. The equipment's getting bigger. Which we have a hard time keeping them roads in any kind of condition at all with that big equipment. So, and with fewer and less farms, they've eliminated, you can go up some of our roads and you only have 1 or 2 farms in the whole road for miles on end. So we've lost the tax base to be able to keep them roads up. So that's becoming a challenge to every municipality. I don't know how we're going to make up those taxes. And certainly I agree with the mayor when he talks about expansion of natural gas. We've been pushing that here for quite some time, and of course the internet. And I don't particularly agree with you on your concept of no smaller farms, because some of these smaller farms can be very productive depending on what they're growing. We got acreage out here that the pot plant on, very small piece of land, but we're growing, like pepper plants and stuff like that can be very successful in producing food. So There's other smaller municipalities have been fighting for smaller farms for just exactly that reason. Haven't been that successful, but, I'd like to see that looked at a little better. Realize it needs to stay in agricultural production. And the final thing I'll say is I think the agricultural industry within itself, there's a program out there where if you're so dedicated to your farm, staying in farming, you can donate that farm so that it stays always in agriculture, no matter who buys it, no matter who sells it. I forget the name of it. You'll know.
Ontario Farmland.
Yeah.
Trust.
So to me, within your own organization, I think that's something that should be pushed quite a bit to say, if you're really serious about agriculture, here's a way you can do it. So that's.
The Ontario Farmland Trust.
Yeah.
Once you've turned your land over to them, it becomes theirs basically.
Yeah.
But it stays in agriculture. That's quite right.
Yeah, so that would certainly protect it. So anyways, I'm with you on most of it, but some things I question.
I won't disagree with what you said, but one of the things that when you talk about roads and bridges and the tax base, that's why we go and talk about the Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund, because that's been eroded. I was on council for 16 years in Thames Center and West Missouri at the time, and it was great for a long time, and then it got eroded. And I mean, now it's been cut probably about by 50%, I would imagine. And by today's dollars, that's even more so because they don't account for inflation. So that's one of the areas that we work with you on. And in terms, just to comment quickly on your small farm thing.
Yeah.
Somebody can make good money in growing lavender or something like that, let's say, on 5 acres, but that doesn't prevent them from having 95 acres in sweet corn or other productions. So having a small farm isn't necessarily the answer, in my opinion, but it can be still something else done to it. So somebody could rent 20 acres off a 100-acre farm, grow lavender or whatever they wish to try and do that. So there are ways of doing that.
Lots of time in my day when they're severing off smaller farms, it was more for their son, the daughter, so they could stay on the farm. So and just one final thing quickly.
Your second final thing.
And I just questioned him on tree bylaw. What do you have it listed there? What are you talking about that to loosen it up or to tighten it?
Personally, I think stay away from it.
Stay away from.
No, it's basically to have a tree bylaw to allow for. So that you don't just cut down the trees in the forests for no particular reason other than to expand. We want to be able to expand the land if it's viable, but there is also a certain amount that you have to leave because it does capture carbon as well. So there's a carbon sink in terms of the forest end of it and the woodlots. They're also a viable end of making money for the farm. About 10 years ago, we had a forestry person into our farm and we got about $7,000 or $8,000 off about a 5-acre parcel. So, but it needs to be managed. So when we talk about tree bylaws, it's all of that put together. So
It's very challenging when you talk to farmers about telling them they can't cut their trees. We tried it here in Plympton County, believe me.
I agree with you, because what I find frustrating is we get told we can't put a drainage ditch in, or we can't clean a ditch because there's a salamander in it. And yet somebody can come in and put up 200 houses and clear cut and level them. So it's a challenge no matter which way you look at it.
I agree. Excellent discussion. Thank you.
Anyway, I could be here all day too, Mr. Mayor.
I think we need to set something up between you and council. Let us
My
know,
pleasure.
let us know where you're going next and we'll see.
Thank you very much for having me. So really.
Thank you
appreciate
both.
the time.
Yeah, it's been great having both of you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, council, let's roll to item 6 on the agenda. Sorry, item 5. Clerk, any business from the previous meeting minutes? Okay, we'll declare that closed and go to item 6. Council meeting minutes. I have a motion by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Councillor Bob Wolvett, that the minutes be adopted by council and that those confidential minutes of the closed sessions of council remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. There is all closed special meetings of the dates of August 2nd, August 2nd, August 3rd, August 3rd, August 9th, and August 9th of 2023. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council, let's go to 6.2 on the agenda, committee meeting minutes. Moved by Councillor Bojan, seconded by Councillor Rodriguez, that the minutes be adopted by council and that the confidential minutes of the closed sessions remain confidential and restricted from public disclosure in accordance with the exemptions provided in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy. It would be the Fire Executive Committee meeting minutes of June 27th, 2023, Special Fire Executive Committee meeting minutes of July the 7th, 2023, Special Fire Executive Committee meeting minutes of July 14th, 2023. We have the chair of the committee here. If anybody has questions. Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council, let's go to 6.3 councilors report. Deputy, this is your section, please.
Yes, Councillor Wovitt, have you done anything last little while that's important to us?
Yeah, the only thing I will comment on is the old 1932 fire truck progress. It was updated actually today, this afternoon, about that truck. That truck's over here at Broadway. And they've been going over it, and what they found on it so far at this point for around $400 and some bill right now is that the engine has basically one dead cylinder in it, and that number one cylinder has zero compression. So what we're looking at now, what I advised of today was to look into that a little bit more and find out why that number one cylinder has no compression, rather than go ahead and send it away for rebuilding, because that could be a valve, could be something smaller. So
It could just be fixed rather than the whole.
yes, exactly. So I advised Mr. Freer to get a little more information on it before we pull the engine, because they had a bid come back with somewhere around $20,000 to do it. I think you could buy an engine for that. So
Probably could put it in your garage and you could piddle away at it.
I know a bit about it. That engine is a 6-cylinder Chevy overhead valve engine. I didn't realize they built them since 1929. I didn't think the overhead valve engine came into effect till the 40s or 50s. Anyways,
Is this another one of your soliloquies here?
yeah. Just anyway, so that's about all I have to update you. But the question was, does council support us still with the original money that was, and I said, absolutely, carry on, and let's see where we're going from here.
Good.
Other than that, that's all.
Good, thank you. Mr. Van Claveren.
Yes, thank you, Deputy Mayor. The Plympton County Historical Society met on August 24th at the Somber Museum. And we were given a nice presentation on the community of Port Lambton. Very interesting historical events happened there in the last 100 and some years. And then Elizabeth Cummings here today. We've got a lot on the drainage agenda as well, but we were out to visit a farm property for Bill and Carol McKinley to survey the extensive cleanup and shore up work being done on the Alberta Creek drain. And it was a neat time. And just visiting with them and walking the drain and telling them everything that needs to be done there. They had lots of questions, and those are good experiences to go through. Yep, you learn a lot, and I think we left them quite comfortable. We arrived here, they may not have
You
been
left
that
somebody really happy? Okay.
happens on occasion. Yeah,
Once in a while, okay. Thank
that's
you.
all for me, Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Bouchin.
Thank you, Deputy. I figured you'd be looking for an update from AMO.
Exactly, that's the next.
I thought AMO was great. So I was there for all 3 days. Some of the things that I took away, there was a really good discussion. I'm sure the mayor will talk more about it, but there was a great discussion with Roma regarding the CN and drainage dispute. That happened on the Monday night. That was really good.
Did you go to the same one that
Yeah, we were all,
the mayor went? Yeah, okay.
yeah, there was, and I'm sure the mayor will talk about his delegations as well, but that was really good. Councilor Rodriguez, Mr. Spansky and I also met with the Nature Conservancy of Canada for Phragmites, which was a pretty informative meeting as well. And then some other sessions that I attended that were memorable were about provincial housing framework and how it keeps evolving, seniors housing, and grant funding opportunities were some of the ones that jumped out. And then, of course, there was the ministers forum where lots of our municipal colleagues were not afraid to ask some tough questions to the ministers, which was also good, on things like housing and provincial funding. So that was my AMO report for the deputy, because I knew she'd be looking for it. Nothing new for Environmental Services Committee. We meet next week. The Special Events Committee, we finalized the dates for trivia night. So in Kamlaki at the Community Center, there will be trivia night on October 14th. In Wyoming at the Legion, there'll be trivia night on November 11th. And Christmas in the Village will be returning on December 9th. So those are the 3 remaining events for the committee. And then lastly, if anyone's listening to this meeting, there's the Kamlaki firefighters are putting on a movie night tonight still. It won't be outside, but they've moved it inside at the community center. So that kicks off at 7. The movie will probably be around 8.
Yeah, good. What was that November date for trivia night in Wyoming?
11th.
Oh. Very good. Okay.
That's everything from me.
Make note of that. Thank you. Okay. So that was a better report than on the Good Roads conference. That was just, it was good. This one,
Didn't know what you expected. Now I know what you expect.
exactly. Councilor Rodriguez, did you do anything?
Thank you.
Every minister.
Yeah.
Every minister. Well, we had our fire exec meeting that Bob, spoke on the highlight of that. And then the AMO, yes, so I attended for 5 days.
It's only a 3-day event.
Well, it's actually 4 Sundays, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. It's 4. I was there for 5 because there was supposed to be planning training, but was not informed that it was no longer happening. But I was there.
What did you do then? It wasn't.
Well, I met Minister Stephen Clark instead.
Oh, you just
So-
stayed with him?
Yeah. So no, but I did. He was very helpful. First person I met at the conference. So, and then, so on the Sunday, I attended one of the sessions hosted by Minister Raymond Chu. And met with him as well after it was on, his delegation was on, discuss how municipalities can work towards age-friendly communities or aging in place that not only benefit the elderly, but improve the quality of life for all residents with different capacities. There's an inclusive community grants program, which is now open for applications for communities who are working to promote age-friendly and accessibility for safe and active living for all ages and abilities. So you know how we have the AODA funding. So this is another source of funding for accessibility needs as well. Then Parks and Rec Ontario had a presentation to promote building complete communities and parks, which is a pretty critical part of our infrastructure. Their takeaways, or my takeaways from them, were if we keep taking cash in lieu of land, we will have more housing than parks, which will ultimately negatively impact the health and well-being of our children, families, communities, and our environment. One solution being offered was to incorporate parkland charges with stormwater development charges by parks. So that you can incorporate stormwater infrastructures in park land.
Our last one we did.
Nice, see?
Exactly.
So kudos, because that's what they're still promoting. I also sat in on the ongoing legal challenge, as Councillor Boja mentioned, regarding CN and the city of Chatham. And as well on the Nature Conservancy as well as on the Nature Conservancy working to amalgamate municipal resources across Ontario to deal with invasive species. In our particular subject matter was Phragmites, but they do deal with other invasive species. I was busy.
3 days anyway.
For
Oh,
I sat in on presentations from the Honorable Steve Clark, Catherine McKenna, as well as all of us did, Kellen Mulrooney and Premier Doug Ford. And I listened to and later spoke with Glenn Hare, the Chiefs of Ontario. And then we all attended the Ministers Forum where they were taking questions from the audience.
did you ask any there?
Pardon me?
Did you ask any there at that ministers forum?
No, I quickly learned that would be futile.
Oh,
They're experts in not answering. I visited many vendor booths. One in particular caught my attention, and that was Stinson's. They provide a mobile / stationary crosswalk solution and other possible traffic monitoring and data collection tools with the use of analytic technology in today's cameras. There are discussions being set up with staff and Stinson, and hopefully something will come to council on this in the near future.
is that it?
Yeah, I was busy, so I tried to, I didn't want to go on forever.
Oh, that's good.
Did a good
That's
job,
enough.
5 days.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
It's all covered to me?
pretty well.
You can't top that.
No, I don't think I will try. I didn't meet as many ministers as Councilor Rodriguez did.
Well, you weren't there as many days, but
But first of all, I'd like to thank Councilors Rodriguez and Bojan, as well as Mr. Sabansky, for sitting in on that presentation on the Phragmites. I was tied up and unable to do it, and I know they brought back a lot and made some good connections on that as well. Going forth in the future, I did have a meeting along with Mayor Case with Minister Thompson, Minister of Agriculture. It was well worth it. We had actually a 2-hour meeting dealing with our CN issue. The lack of them paying what's owed to us and paying their drainage assessment as well. We also did sit in on a presentation with Chatham, municipality of Chatham Kent, in relations to what they're dealing with CP. And I think that's about as far as I'll leave it, because there are some legal issues that are being addressed and looked at as we move forward. And I would also like to thank our drainage superintendent, who made a special trip to sit in on that session as well. Thank you, Elizabeth, for doing that. A lot of interaction with municipal leaders. I found the conference to be quite enjoyable. One thing that I will share with council: when I was at Roma, Mr. Sabansky and I were approached by an editor / reporter for a magazine called Business View Magazine. And he was interviewing several municipalities of all various sizes, talking, and he asked us if we were available to do an interview, and we did. The next morning, we had time booked for an hour with him and talked about our infrastructure, our master plan, how we're doing the work with our sewage system and all that stuff. And they were quite interested in it. And he, at the end of the interview, he said, "I will take this information back to my editor. They're going to be picking 5 or 6 municipalities to feature in their magazine." And he said, "I'll let you know if you've been successful or not." Yesterday, I received notification from him that we will be one of the featured municipalities in the magazine, along with Woodstock, Orangeville, Whitby, Clearview, and Niagara Falls. So I was very pleased that we were chosen, and we have some further interviews to do, and I'm presuming they're going to come to the municipality and do some pictures and stuff like that as well. So that, on a very positive note, that was a good thing for us. So
What was the name of the magazine?
Business View Magazine.
Business View.
Yeah. So that's all I have.
good, we'll come. We'll see how that-
Yeah.
Very much so. And yeah, good communication. Ongoing issue with the railroad, of course. We're not going away. When we ran into their representative He didn't want to talk to us.
Well, is that the one that sat here and talked to us before?
That's right.
Sort of double talked?
Right. Wanted to give us coffee and donuts.
Yeah.
That's all I have, Deputy. How about you? Have you been busy?
No, I haven't. Thought I'd wait and listen to you guys. No, I haven't. We had a press board meeting. It wasn't all that long. We just, dealt with a couple of issues that were minimal. What else did, that's about it. So that's the end of the council's reports.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. Thank you, Councilor. All right, let's go to item number 7. Clerk, anything under accounts?
Nothing at this time.
All right, let's go to 8.1, fall newsletter. A motion by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Bojan, that the report by Danny Giles, Executive Assistant Deputy Clerk, dated August 21st, 2023, regarding the 2023 fall newsletter be received. The council approved the distribution of the newsletter with the final tax billing. From the draft copy I've looked at so far, Deputy Clerk, you've done an excellent job of pulling that together. Councilor, is there anything that you'd like to share with us relating to that, or that you'd like to see, Councilor Bojan?
Thank you. And yeah, thank you, Denny. I know you wrote this before the last meeting that we had. So is there any way we can change the short-term rental piece just to be more current because of Monday's meeting? So we've received the report already, and then there will be a special council meeting to discuss. It was written before we had that meeting. I was wondering if there's a way to make that more minute. And then for the special events, when I can send it to you in an email, but I'm wondering if we can change, since we have those dates now. Instead of still to come, if we can do, save the date
On the second page. Yeah.
on the second page. Yep. And I can send you that as an email, Danny. Those are the only 2 things I had, otherwise it was great.
Deputy Clerk?
I would like to also extend a thank you to my manager, Aaron, and I think Ella also helped with putting this together. It was not me, because I left for vacation.
Thank you, Aaron and Ella.
It's called teamwork, I believe. Deputy?
Yeah, can you tell me where there might be, for emergencies? Where are dam failures around here? Can you tell me that? Just,
What was it, dam failure?
yeah, dam failures. Where, Elizabeth could probably answer that.
Emergency.
Yeah, on emergency preparedness.
Beaver?
Well, beaver dams, but if they fail, that's fine.
It's
So-
an expletive is what it.
Oh, it should have an N on it.
Deputy?
I'm not sure if you mean like around like this municipality,
Well, that's sort of what
but in general, that information just comes from Emergency Management Ontario.
okay, all right, that
And that's
explains
just
it.
one of their emergencies.
Thank you, yeah.
Councilor Rodriguez?
Thank you. Is there somewhere we can fit in the smoke and CO battery change and test to be added? I feel like that should be a permanent feature since we do spring and fall. As part of our obligations under fire prevention and education. It's a good way to,
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
sorry. Oh,
Councilor Rodriguez is asking about having something in there about the smoke and fire alarm program, because it's one that we promote every year.
I think it makes sense.
well, it's about the changing the batteries, spring and fall.
Deputy?
Safety.
Yes,
May,
clerk.
Your Worship.
Yes, clerk.
I'm thinking we could tighten up the emergency management section there, maybe fit it. We don't have a ton of room, but I think we could just do a little reminder to change your smoke alarms. Yeah.
Thank you. That would be it.
That's it. Okay. Anything to my left? Councilor, Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I do have, somebody told me around here that if you're throwing pop bottles in the blue box, you have to take the lid off. And they said that that was probably going to be in our newsletter, but I don't see it. So is it an actual rule or nobody's heard of it?
Yes.
I didn't dream of it.
No, I concur. I read that and I think it was on our website. And I had this discussion with my sister because she was in the Whitby region, Huntsville region. She's like, no, you don't. So it's like, do you or don't you?
Well, that's what I was sort of wondering whether we do or don't, because I was trying to
Regions
they're
definitely.
not gonna read it. They're gonna say, oh, she's nuts. Well, I am sometimes, but I didn't think in this case.
So what is this? You're taking lids off of?
Pop bottles,
Or bottles.
any bottles, you take their lids off, screw their lids off there. I think it may be a little different plastic. Yeah.
A clerk and then deputy clerk.
If I may suggest that our staff that work with our recycler could ask if it's something we can add it to this section of the newsletter. There's room there for sure.
If you verify it.
Yeah, we'll verify first. Yep.
It's about lids.
Everybody good? Anything else? Sorry, I have deputy clerk and then you, Councilor Willett.
I'm good.
Done.
Took the words out of it.
Team.
Just a question on the final boat launch fees. Is that our final thing for next year? Like, do we need, are we gonna make any changes, increase the prices, decrease them or whatever? Or was that it?
Clerk?
Thank you, your worship. There was a motion passed by council and those were the fees that were set in there.
For next year?
So the information and bylaw that's gonna come next year will speak to those fees and also speak to fines. So these are just fees right now are being charged. There is no fines, but we have to get that in set up with set fines. So that is the fee that's been agreed upon. If council chooses to change that fee through budget deliberations or at another time, it can be changed, but right now that's what we've been directed.
Thank you.
Okay. Everybody else good on that? Okay, call, yes.
Could you just, is the mover and seconder okay with changing that motion to as amended, since there was some changes requested?
That would be
Deputy Mayor McEwen and Councillor Bowden.
Of course.
Yep, thank you.
okay, motion again by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Bojan, that the report by Danny Giles, Executive Assistant Deputy Clerk, dated August 21st, 2023, regarding the 2023 fall newsletter be received and the council approve distribution in the newsletter with the final tax billing as amended. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, we do have readings at 6, guys, just so everybody's aware. Let's go to item 9. Wyoming Tree Service requests the host community presentation and proposed use of public facilities agreement. Motion by Councilor Bojan, seconded by Councilor Rodriguez, that the correspondence from Wyoming Tree Service dated August the 8th, 2023 be received, and bylaw 92 of 2023 be the bylaw to enter into an agreement with Wyoming Tree Service for the use of the public facilities be taken as having been read 3 times and finally passed, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. So you've heard the motion. You've had a chance, council, to read what the proposal is. I guess one of the questions I have, Deputy Mayor, did this come back to Parks? Do you
Yes,
know?
it did, and that's why it's coming here now.
Parks approved it to come to
Yes.
council,
Yes.
and you have a facility out at that park that's good enough to set everything up there.
Yes, the Pink Square, yes.
Open for questions, Councilor Bojan. Sorry, do you have a question?
Oh.
Okay, Councilor Rodriguez, I saw movement.
Again.
I know who you are. I saw movement.
Okay, no worries. Thank you. I guess my only question is, it didn't say how many trees were being donated and planted. And it said it would come back at a later date, but, I did call Wyoming Tree Service and asked, how many trees they were donating, and it was 2. That they were donating and using for this educational purpose. My only question, I'm just wondering why we're choosing to charge an $80 fee when it is a community service and there is a donation of 2 trees, so.
I think the clerk can answer that for us.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, a request wasn't received to waive the fee, and second, our new fee waiver policy speaks to if it is a for-profit business, they are not eligible for a fee to be waived.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay.
You're supposed to come back to the tree committee, or at least staff at least, to have their positions for the new trees approved.
The locations wise. Any questions over here? Okay. Okay, call for the vote. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council, let's go to 9.2 before we take a break for the drainage. Kamlaki Summer Send Off for the Huron Shores Optimist, moved by Councilor Van Claveren, seconded by Councilor Wolvette. That bylaw 97 of 2023 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with the Huron Shores Optimist for the use of public facilities, be taken as having been read 3 times. Finally passed, and the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. And the council waived the $3 agreement fee. Clerk, would you like to speak on that?
Just briefly, is there anyone in the waiting room? Bruce Moulton, the president of the Huron Shores Optimist, was going to attempt to join if he could. Pardon me?
He's on.
Okay, if you can. let me know. Oh, no, in the waiting room, I mean, online.
Oh, yeah, I thought you meant up there too. There is.
Assuming they're Dre people, though. Thankfully.
I
The
thought,
online waiting room. He was gonna be on to speak to this. Wanted to make sure he was there.
Mr. Moulton, if you can prepare yourself, we're gonna be letting you in on this.
I am totally prepared.
All good.
Thanks for.
Best friend.
All right, so what, Bruce, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
I'll tell you, I just got online here for some reason. I believe that because I'm using the town or the Committee of Adjustments iPad, they weren't sure who it was. So all I know is that we're just requesting the fee to be waived in light of moving over to the Lamrecton Park area.
Are you at Lamrecton or you're at Lakeshore?
Well, Lakeshore, but I believe they're gonna try to utilize Lamrecton for parking as well.
Okay. All right.
Oh, sorry, they're not. My apologies.
Okay. Clerk?
Your Worship, just to add to that, so yes, the event has moved to Lakeshore Park. The Huron Shores Optimists are those signing the agreement, providing the insurance in the agreement. There is stipulations that Mr. Savansky has worked with the organizers of the event on, and they are accepting of all the requirements of that in the agreement. And there is a plan, drawing in there as well that where they're planning on locating the items through the event.
Okay.
So the proposal did come back or came to council originally as being at Arnold Manili, and it's moved here. So this is the proposal and it's formal.
Any questions on that, council? Okay, let's call for the vote. All those in favor? Great. So Bruce, that looks like it's a go then for you.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you for stepping in on that, Bruce.
No problem. I guess the only other thing, of course, we would love to do it again at the Kamlaki Community Center area. Wi-Fi and obviously mobility, mobile data issues are huge out in our way. So it'd be great if council has any impact on that. That would be awesome for them to look that over within the next year.
Yeah, we do realize we need that out there, Bruce. So it's something we are working on and towards.
Great, thank you very much.
You're welcome, Bruce. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Okay, council, it's now 6 o'clock, so I'm going to put the regular council meeting on hold. And we're going to go to drainage meeting. So if we can just move around for our staff. Okay, Council, you also, we're waiting for Councilor Wilvet. It's a little bit after 6. I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is the consideration meeting for the Carmichael Improvements Drain 2023. Council, if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest, we would ask you to please declare it. Hearing none, please declare at the appropriate moment as we pass through the business. The purpose of the consideration meeting is to discuss the proposed works and technical aspects of the drainage report dated August the 18th, 2023 for the Carmichael drain improvements. If there are assessment concerns, these will be addressed at the Court of Revision. At this time, I'd like to introduce to you the members of council and our staff that are present. Deputy Mayor Nettie McEwen, Councillor Bob Wolvett, Councillor John Van Claveren, Councillor Alex Bojan, Councillor Kristen Rodriguez. Staff, we have Elizabeth Cummings, our Drainage and Engineering Coordinator, as well as Jessica Wilson, our Drainage Clerk. Our engineer on this project is Mr. Mike Garrett's of M. Garrett's Consulting. Mr. Garrett's, this time I'd ask you to provide an update on the status of the report, please.
Thank you through Mr. Mayor and to council. So this report was authorized under section 78 of the Drainage Act as per the request of an affected landowner. The report includes updating an overall plan that reflects the current watershed boundary. The boundary will set the limits for the Armstrong watershed, which is currently being approved under a separate report by Dobbin Engineering. The report includes the installation of a second culvert across Egremont Road and downstream open channel drainage improvements to reduce the flooding on the Baines lands, and it provides a new schedule of maintenance. The existing conditions, so the Baines land at the southwest corner of Egremont Road and Fleming Road is scheduled to be developed. The land's legal outlet for drainage is the Colburn drain. As part of the St. Clair Regional Conservation Authority approval process, the landowner was required to complete a flood hazard assessment on the lands. The flood hazard assessment identified that it delineated the Carmichael drain floodplain under the existing conditions and under the regional storm event. And it provided recommendations for improvements to the Carmichael drain to allow the Baines lands to be developed. We had a set meeting on April 12th at the town of Plympton-Wyoming municipal offices to review the drain improvement requests with landowners. The second meeting was held on June 7th on Fleming Road at the DeMeyer's property to review the watershed limits of the DeMeyer land and the Saul lands. And a third meeting was held on July 11th at the town of Plympton-Wyoming office to review the watershed boundary with the landowners at the top end of the drain and Longo's entrance. So when we got into it, they're doing some work on the Armstrong drain, and I have a better Carmichael drain watershed. So I just wanted to get the landowners' input before we changed it, so they're not blindsided when they get the Armstrong drain. So it's a little bit different because people filed a little bit differently. So it's just been updated from the old 1970s or whatever reports. The design was completed by BM Ross, and it was a review and approved by St. Clair Regional Conservation Authority. The proposed drain was designed to accommodate the regional flood design as outlined in the hydraulic or the flood hazard report. The open channel has 2 to 1 vertical side slopes with a 1.5 meter bottom and an auxiliary 1,500 millimeter diameter culvert across Egremont Road. The estimated cost has been the amount of $293,072, including engineering. The assessment on this drain is a bit different. The clearing and grubbing of the existing channel has been assessed with 33% of the cost, less the engineering, assessed as a benefit assessment and the remainder assessed as outlet assessment to upstream lands based on equivalent hectares. So basically, these improvements are resulting in the drain being deepened, widened, and new culvert, but the landowners on the drain are responsible for clearing and grubbing the section of drain that's going to be improved, and not including, they're not responsible for any of the improvements such as the widening or the culverts. They're only getting assessed as if the drainage superintendent came in and cleared the channel under routine maintenance, because it does need some maintenance. The open channel improvements, less the clearing and grubbing cost has been assessed to the Baines lands. And then the additional cost assessed with Egremont Road crossing has been assessed as a section 26 to the road authority. When maintenance is completed on this drain, maintenance within the Egremont Road allowance will be maintained by the town. However, when the Longo lands are developed, they only have a small amount of land in it, but when they're developed, they'll no longer direct any water to this drain. So they're taken out of the schedule of maintenance once they're developed. If they're developed and it sits for the next 10 years, they'll be assessed into any maintenance that goes on, but the day that they're developed, they'll be taken out of it. I have had some correspondence, one from Mr. Baines. He sent a letter that he agrees with the design work described in the report. He wanted council to understand that he had 2 drains on his lands and he intends to control his own stormwater with a stormwater management facility. And he'd like the municipality or the landowners east of Fleming Road to pay their portion for floodwaters as surcharge onto his land. He feels paying for all the improvements isn't fair. He also acknowledged the right that he has the right to appeal to the court of revision for his assessment. And if that doesn't work, he has the right to pursue to the tribunal. Those are the options for the appeals. In response to Mr. Baines' comments, the Baines lands requested the drain improvements to allow for the development of their lands. Under the Drainage Act, all landowners within the watershed don't require these improvements to maintain or keep their sufficient outlet that they paid for under the original drain. Controlling regional storm events or any other requirements to meet SCRA approvals are not normally part of the drain's responsibility. And lastly, a landowner, when I was walking in, informed me about the Burkers number 2 drain. So Elizabeth looked it up now. So I will have to, provided that it's accepted this report, I would have to look at the Burkers number 2 and take the Burkers, most likely take the Burkers number 2 out of the watershed, and that can be dealt with at the court of revision as a revised plan with a revised schedule of assessment and schedule of maintenance. So I have that drain in there. I didn't realize that it took that section out. So after this meeting, if it is accepted, I would look at it and then I'd resubmit for consideration at the court of revision. That's all I have to say. I can answer any questions from council or from the landowners.
All right, thank you, Mr. Carrots. Clerk, we have received. Mr. Brennan, if we see from anybody else on the screen. Mr. Bain, would you like to address the council on this, please?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor Atkinson and members of council. Actually, my whole argument's gone. So I just want to say that I do support the recommendations of work to be done for the Carmichael drain. I was just surprised because, I mean, the watershed area is outside of my area and their water is going to come onto my land with a Hazel hurricane storm event, whatever that is. So I thought, like me, I take care of my drainage, they should take care of their drainage. And this whole process has been going on for 3.5 years. I'm gonna have my 4-year anniversary this December, trying to get this land developed. So I just again was surprised to get assessed about $170,000. I thought that was outrageous, but I understand that goes somewhere else. So
So the next one, the court of revision on that one, sir.
yeah, so that's easy for me. I'm happy to, but I did want to show you all the drainage we've got for our development. It's beautiful. And we're going to be building at my expense, this big pond here. So I think, and also I should also mention, I think some of the neighbors on that back on, or that are on Egremont will be excited to have this development go ahead because they've had some flooding issues. By the time we get our drainage in, our new homes all have drains at the back of the property. All that's going to the Colburn Road drain as opposed to the Somerville drain now. So it's always an improvement for them. That's it.
Thank you. Council, any questions? Mr. Bulgin? Rodriguez?
I do have a question. You mentioned, Mr. Garrett, you mentioned Longo Holdings. They're going to be assessed on this drain now, but when they develop, they're not gonna be assessed on it anymore. It's gonna go to the water, is gonna go to the same place, is it not?
No, so they have a small portion, they own multiple pieces of property on this drain, but their larger developable land has a sliver of land that right now would drain towards Egremont Road and wrap around and come into the drain. When they develop their lot, they'll be required to take the rear yard and bring them forward, so they'll be taken right out of the watershed. They won't be in it anymore. And so the maintenance been set up that when that does occur, we don't need to open the report up. We just simply take the Longo lands out of the,
So where does that go?
it's gonna go through into their own stormwater management pond and facility and dump.
Where?
It goes into Arrow Creek, sorry, which is in the middle of their property. So they're forced to bring their rear yards to their storm sewer. Their storm sewer wraps around, does not go into the Carmichael drain, dumps into Egremont, and Egremont goes out.
I'm sure I'll be asked in the future. But thank you.
Anything else, Deputy?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
Councilor Van Claveren? Councilor Wolbeck? Well, it sounds like you're happy with that, Mr. Payne, so we'll see ahead. I need some. Yes, sir.
I'd like to know the quick question. They didn't, I live on Egremont Road,
Laverne, could you just identify yourself for the record, please?
Laverne Pembleton,
Your address?
3646 Egremont Road. Okay, that drain down there, that we had all that rain the other day, that drain wasn't full coming out of there. Plus, behind us there, yeah, on Lakeshore, off of Queen, Longo's put that subdivision there. There was supposed to be a surge pond in there. They changed their mind and directed into the creek. So now they say they're gonna put a pond in there. Are they gonna do the same thing with it? But that culvert wasn't full the other day with all that rain we had. So we're gonna pay to upgrade that again. We just put the drain by our place a couple of years ago because of the houses across the road. You know, because it wasn't up to date for them to build the houses. We paid to put that one in. Now we're paying again for subdivisions to keep going. You know. They moved the drain on the road off Fleming. And now they're saying that it's not big enough to take it to the creek. I guess why? I'm the one that told him about Berkeley #2. Because it wasn't, the way he had it, it wasn't in, they don't even drain into this.
Can respond if you'd like.
Yes, please.
Mr. Mayor, so the landowner's water will drain along Egremont Road. It will get into the Carmichael drain, and the people there, like everyone on the drain, are responsible for the clearing of that drain. They're not responsible for the widening. They're not paying for the culvert. Doug Baines is paying for all the widenings on this drain. The culvert's being paid for by the town of Plympton-Wyoming. But their water is like any drain. If we have to do maintenance on it, such as clearing and grubbing, it gets assessed to upstream drains, even if they're on a branch drain that they had to pay for.
Rodriguez?
Just for clarification. Is this gentleman referring to assessment charges down the road for maintenance, or is he going to be assessed on this upgrade?
They are assessed on this. There is the maintenance. So when we clear and grub it, the clearing and grubbing gets assessed to everyone in the watershed, everyone. And he's within the watershed through a branch drain. So he's in that schedule of assessment. The schedule of assessments are smaller because of the size of the watershed and the amount of work that's being done, because we're just clearing and grubbing. We're not doing actual construction. So they are small, and there was no engineering on that as well. There was nothing, because it was if the drainage superintendent was called to clear and scrub the drain, as if it was just a regular maintenance routine.
Any questions from council? Okay, I have a motion by Councilor Van Claveren, seconded by Councilor Wolbeck, report by M. Garrett Consulting Incorporated, dated August 18th, 2023, regarding the Carmichael Drain improvements 2023 be adopted as presented. Provisional bylaw 88 of 2023 be taken as having been read a first and second time on this 30th day of August 2023. The mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the said bylaw accordingly. Also, you've heard the motion. All those in favor? Carried. Motion by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Claveren. Consideration meeting for the Carmichael Drain Improvements of 2023 be adjourned. Order revision be set for September 27th, 2023. September 27th, 2023. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, council, we're gonna go to the Somerville. A little bit late, but we're not doing too bad. First of all, a reminder to council, if you have a declaration of pecuniary interest, please do so at the appropriate time. Purpose of this consideration meeting is to discuss the proposed works and technical aspects of the drainage report dated August 11th, 2023 for the Somerville drain improvements. If there are assessment concerns, these will be addressed at the Court of Revision. Once again, I'll introduce our committee members. We have Councilor Bob Olvet, Councilor John Van Claveren, Deputy Mayor McEwen, Councilor Alex Bojan, Councilor Rodriguez. Our staff is our Drainage and Engineering Coordinator, Elizabeth Cummings, as well as our Drainage Clerk, Jessica Wilson. Our engineer on this project is Mr. Mike Garretts from M. Garretts Consulting. Mr. Garretts, you have an opportunity. Could you please provide us an update on the status of your report, please?
To the mayor and to council. So the Somerville drain was, I guess, it was under section 78 of the Drainage Act. I'll give a bit of a history to the Drainage Act, since there's quite a few residential area people in the chambers or council chambers, sorry. So if any landowners on the Somerville drain have a question about the act or their rights under the act after this meeting, they can call me. My name's on the top of the report with my phone number. The act, it can be compared to a user pay system with landowners within the watershed being responsible for the water generated on their lands. The landowners are assessed for either a benefit or an outlet. In some cases, they're assessed for both benefit and outlet. Benefit comes in the form which includes protection of property, control of surface water, such as in the Somerville drain because it's a berm, some subsurface connections for rear yards. These are all benefits that a landowner can derive from being on a drain. Outlet assessments deal with the conveyance of the water through the drain, and it's on a section by section basis. So if your water enters the drain, it's going to go through the drain. You're going to receive an outlet assessment for your portion of the drain that it uses. Outlet assessments are based on area and account for the amount of water generated on the lands and the distance each parcel of land is contributes to the drain. Current report has a schedule of maintenance, which all lands are not assessed equally, obviously. For residential lands, the residential outlet assessment is the same equivalent dollar per equivalent hectare. However, if you're located in the upper end and your water's traveling through, you're gonna have a bigger outlet assessment. But the basis for the whole outlet assessment is the same for every residential landowner. It's $1 per equivalent hectare. The only difference is as you travel down the drain. So in 1985, Jim Monteith prepared a report which included the main drain and the branch drain, and therefore this drain's been in existence since 1985, when the drain was constructed. Landowners at that time accepted the report, and the report remains valid until it's abandoned. Abandonments in their entirety are difficult and are not common because there is a reason to have the drain. They do happen when we realign drains, things like that, but to get rid of a drain, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. There's a section of the act for it, but it's not very common because the drain is doing something. Landowners on this drain were before responsible for maintenance and still are responsible for maintenance on this drain. The cost of this drain report and any proposed improvements are being borne by the developer and not are assessed to the landowners of the drain. Future maintenance of this drain will be assessed out to the landowners on the drain when and if maintenance does occur. It's important to know that maintenance is done on a basis of where the blockage or the maintenance is being completed and then upstream. So if you're downstream of maintenance blockage or maintenance repair, you don't get assessed. It's only assessed to the land that it's on and the land's upstream. So if it's at the beginning, the very bottom of the drain, of course, everyone's going to be assessed for it. If it's at the top end, only the top properties will be assessed for it. The improvements will result. So the improvements on this drain will have the part that the Baines development is doing. So he's not replacing the entire drain, but any improvements that he does do, we're bringing it up to the current standards, not from the original standards that they're at. So we put in a bigger pipe. It has more capacity, so it's not going to negatively affect the flows of the drain. So the report includes reconnecting all connections to the Somerville drain and Somerville branch drain. They're going to maintain the 0.4 meter high berm. We'll have to reinstate it where we dig through because our new pipe is there. At the meetings, the landowner requested that the berms remain. It has a 5 meter working corridor and it's got schedules of maintenance. We had an on-site meeting on September 17th to review the section 78 request. The design, the proposed Somerville drain and Somerville branch drain improvements service the rear yards that abut the Baines lands. So in order to ensure it doesn't reduce the capacity, like I said before, we're going to put a larger pipe in. All drains that we encounter when we put the new Somerville drain in will be reconnected. There's an existing private tile which was not completed under the act, and it's between the Somerville drain and the property line. That will remain as a private drain. However, it is a private drain, so when it does fail, the landowners have the opportunity to connect to the new Somerville drain via the connection at their property line, or they can maintain the private drain. We do not, and the town of Plympton-Wyoming would not maintain the private drain. That is a private drain between landowners, and we don't have any authority under the act to fix it. There's been a cost estimate of $197,872, which includes engineering. The costs were assessed to as a section 24 assessment to the Baines lands. Following the construction of the drain, the report has some restrictions, and so no trees or shrubs shall be planted, nor permanent structures be erected within the working corridor without permission from council, unless otherwise specified in this report. And the removal and repair and restoration of any fences within the working corridor that are required due to maintenance operations are the responsibility of the landowner on which the fence is located. So if we have to go in and fix this in the future, we can't use the side yards for some reason. We have to take fences down, then the landowners are responsible to fix their own fences. Otherwise, they shouldn't put them on the working corridor. There's been some correspondence to date. Mr. Baines felt that the drain's functioning properly and preferred not to construct the branch drain. This will minimize tree removal and the scope of work. So Mr. Baines has called and he said the branch drain, which goes north along the back of the lots on King Street and then along the back of the lots on Egremont Road. Mr. Baines has asked for the council to consider removing that from the scope of work. So throughout the drain process, the intention has been to realign this drain closer to the property line to allow for a larger building envelope on the Baines land. If council accepts the Baines request to eliminate the branch drain, the report would need to be referred back for reconsideration. And it's expected that the following changes we need a CCTV inspection of the branch drain to ensure that it's fine for two reasons. One, to ensure that we're taking a drain before development occurs and that they don't crush it during development. So we'd have to, under the subdivision agreement, you'd have to video it after to make sure that construction didn't do any damage to the drain. But further, we don't want to go through with the revision to a report if we camera it and it's a crappy drain. Then we'd want to replace it under this report. However, if the CCTV reveals that it's fine, the council could consider keeping it. I'd also recommend a schedule of maintenance for the branch drain in the event that any maintenance needs to be done in the future. The developer should be aware that, this drain has been, a lot of this drain has been pushed by the timelines that the developers put on everyone. This is going to potentially set it back. I mean, I might make the 27th September 27th council meeting, but we have to CCTV it. We have to revise the report, so it is gonna push the timing of the report back, and I just think everyone, council and Mr. Baines needs to know that that's gonna happen. It's not like this report's gonna make it out tomorrow and be at the next council meeting. And then, of course, although the amount of water in the drain, if you don't, when the Baines develops his land, the amount of water will be less in this drain because Baines is taking his development right out of the watershed as well and bringing it to a stormwater management facility, so that the existing Somerville drain and Somerville branch drains really are just for rear yard lot connections for subsurface or surface water through catch basins. However, it is 35 years old, so normally we wouldn't go as far to say that the town should consider getting an easement across the drain, but in this case, if you have a 35-year-old drain, the town should consider getting an easement, because otherwise, like a drain, we have the right to get on there under the Drainage Act. However, when landowners purchase the land and they see an easement, it's better than when we walk on and say, there's a drain on your land and we need to do maintenance and we're coming across it. I'm not so concerned on the main drain because it's a new drain that we're putting in and there's low flows. But when we're taking over a 35-year-old under the drain, a 35-year-old drain, then they should be looking at putting an easement on there to make sure that everyone that buys those properties is aware that we're gonna potentially be on it. As well, the town could consider under their subdivision agreement to make sure that the area is fenced off so they don't start putting heavy equipment on it. And then, like I said before, we would do a CCTV inspection after the houses are constructed, and this would all have to be part of the subdivision agreement to make sure that the drain is not damaged, and if it is damaged, the developer has to pay for it, not the landowners. I did talk to Mr. Pelche. He called to discuss the depth of the drain. So we confirmed that the drain was approximately 3 feet at the back. I had a call from Mr. Mayu. He may wish to speak about his own concerns here directly, but I understand he assumes his outlet is too large. He doesn't have a connection to the drain, and historically he's made payments on the drain for which he didn't use. So like I said before, all the outlet assessments are based on an equivalent dollar per acre. Mr. Mayu just has a larger piece of land. Lands that don't currently have on the Somerville drain, lands that aren't currently connected have the ability to connect to it. I'm not sure why some lots don't have the connection. That can be the way the report was written back in 1985. If the landowners didn't want it then Monteith wouldn't have brought it to the property line, but it doesn't eliminate your right to tie into the drain. They're in the drain, but now they of course have to get to the drain. As for historical payments, I don't know how much maintenance has been done on this drain, but I work from when I come onto the site and forward. I don't worry about historical payments on the drain. And lastly, if the council accepts to defer the report, then right now, Mr. Mayu would be under the standing if the drain went forward, he'd have a connection brought. Baines would pay for a connection to go to his property line. However, if the branch drain is taken out, then Mr. Baines wouldn't be installing, and therefore the Mayu lands wouldn't receive a free connection to the property line. Doesn't mean they can't connect. They can connect, but it'd be at their own cost. I had discussions with Mr. Bassman as well. He was concerned about the ditch inlet on King Street. So I did look at the ditch inlet. I have talked to BM Ross. So the ditch inlet is there. It's not set by the sidewalk like I informed him. It's more set by the curb. So there is a sidewalk there that's about, 0.6 meters off the property line. Mr. Basson had some comments about the sidewalk. However, the sidewalk is part of the subdivision agreement and not the drain. I deal only with the drainage and not the road alignments and sidewalks and stuff like that. I'm available to answer any questions from landowners or from council.
Okay, Mr. Gertz, that's a very comprehensive.
Yeah, more than normal.
Yes, it is. Okay, so I know we've received correspondence from Mr. Bain. Is anybody else as well?
Mr. Bain was the only one who did written correspondence. I did speak with Mr. Mayu and Mr. Basson here, but I didn't have any written correspondence.
Okay. So Mr. Bain, you're up first.
Thank you.
Anything you'd like to say and continue on what your theory is, the reason you like to do what you want to do?
Yeah, I think that, if I just show you what we're talking about here, I got a call to go out to the site on Thursday because of the rain. And, I met with Elizabeth out there and, I was surprised to see the water. It's flowing very well. That drain is working quite well.
And we're talking about the main Somerville one. We're talking about the branch.
This is the branch off the Somerville. So the Somerville is this. And we are talking about this branch to the north. See these lots we have there, we thought we had to move that back because of the building envelope. But we have a huge building envelope there. Those lots are 140 feet deep. So, if I put the biggest house I can build, it's about, we have to set back the house from 26 feet from the road. It's 63 foot in depth with a 3-car garage. It still leaves 51 feet in the backyard. So I'm saying, and I'm saying, oh my God, why do we want to disrupt? The berm actually is in nice shape there. Some people keep it very clean. Yeah. And, but in any event, I don't really see the need to tear down those pine trees behind your places. We don't need to do that part. The end of story, because that way, we just leave things the way they are. In addition to our development, when that goes ahead, I mean, there's 10 lots that are affected here. But we're going to be building this pond. Our drainage is going to go this way. When we build a house, we put a pit in the backyard and we bring it right out to the front yard storm. So by the time we get done our development, all our water will not be going on the neighbor's property anymore. And I think you did get a letter from Mr. Pelche. He was urging council to move this development ahead. And I guess the bottom line is, I know it's going to take a little bit more time, but in view of the economics out there, we've got 39 new homes for sale. Only 9 have sold in the last, 6 months. So there's no rush. I'd rather have it done right. Besides, I was carrying 4 houses for a year.
So what you're saying, then you would prefer to defer that.
Back to Mr. Garrett's to redo his analysis with this north part taken out. There's trees here that you would disrupt. And there's going to be no need to actually, we don't need it. We initiated the request because somebody thought we needed it. But if you look at the lot layout, 140 feet, we don't need it. I'd rather just leave things the way they are.
Correct. And if we defer this, the whole report is deferred. Then we come back to you, Mr. Garrett. Is that correct? Okay. Council, any questions from you? Council Rodriguez?
Your worship. So when you say you're not in any hurry, you don't mean 4 years from now.
No, I've been carrying $2 million worth of land for 4 years. 2 other developments bought after I did. They're built and sold. So this whole process is, don't get me going on that. It's been very, very, very disappointing.
It's too bad.
Yeah, so if Mr. Garrett can get that report out, I'm sure it's on Word or something. I can help you if you need it. If we can get that back in a timely way, I'm hoping that we can develop either late winter or early spring. Because the economy is probably going to be flat for another year. So it's an opportune time for me to develop the land while the economy is not that good.
Yeah.
Waiting for when it turns around.
That'd be a rarity, developer helping you write a report.
No problem.
I think they all would like to, would they?
Yeah, it sounds like
Yeah, thank you.
so it's just so we're all clear, your decision is, your preference is to have the report. Any questions to my left? Good. Councilor Wolvett?
Well, maybe it's not the time to bring the topic up, but I'm from out in that area, lived on King Street. And gotta tell you that we've had a major water problem out there. I don't live there now. On that berm into the area that you're developing, a huge major water problem. That's why that berm is there.
Yeah.
Trying to keep the water off of King Street. And I know we made improvements along King Street here in the last few years. But I'm concerned about the drainage in the backyards of those houses that are there. I've still got pictures on my computer of these properties being flooded. I understand what you're saying about your development going to drain alter your own pond and stuff, but I still have a major concern in that area and just. Is it going to dry it up? And do these yards along King Street need to be able to tie into that drain with a drain in their backyard? Like I think you're talking, Greg, there about him being able to tie into that drain. They've had major water problems, so this has got to be done. This has got to be done extremely carefully, especially with the kind of rains that we're getting nowadays. So we got to make sure we're doing it right. So if you're not going to replace that drain, as old as it is, I think we need to really think carefully about that before we do it. I'm not sure what the landowners are going to say here tonight, but I know the situation there has been quite extreme over the years with water. So we got to get this right. I'm not sure if this is the place to say it tonight, if you're going to move it on to the next meeting.
Cummings?
You, Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to clarify, the intent is still to replace the drain along King Street. It's the one along Egremont that Mr. Baines is requesting does not get
Right, the north one.
the north one, so not the King Street. The King Street one would remain as a replacement. And perhaps even the other one, it will depend on what we find with the camera, the CT.
Yeah.
The inspections.
So the housing along King Street, then will they be able to tie into that Somerville drain? If you're doing when you're doing the construction there, will they be able to tie into
That's
that?
my understanding, yes.
If I can through here. So the properties along King Street on the main drain, there's 4 lots. I believe they'll all receive new connections to their existing, they'll tie their existing connection into the new drain. You commission the old drain. If you don't go through, then the people on the north part now along Egremont Road, it would just stay the same as it always has been. So. They do. The King Street also could wrap around, and if they wanted to, it'd be obviously a longer pull, but they could bring their water to King Street as well from the rear yards. But there is a drain that goes along the back, so.
We had a real good rain last Thursday and it did its job out there. I don't know whether the neighbors have any problem with the current drain, but I would just say to your comments, let's get this development going sooner than later. Because by the time we get done with our water pond, whatever it is there, management pond, and we redirect our drainage out to the Colburn Road, nothing but an improvement, I believe.
Dr. Bojan?
Thank you. You were here. I'm just thinking about, so the properties on Egremont. I know a lot of those names I've heard concerns from, just in terms of what's happening. I know that berm is saving a lot of their properties and has been. And it was their understanding that the Somerville drain improvement is their safety net here, that when this development goes through, it's going to benefit everybody, and they're no longer have to worry about, and especially further east along Egremont Road, where there's been a lot of flooding issues at those property owners on Egremont. If we defer it so that we take this branch drain stuff away from it, what assurances are these property owners going to have? I mean, right now they think it's being improved and they're being assessed for future maintenance. And if we're taking it away now, what assurances? I'm just not seeing what safety net they have there going forward. Those Egremont properties.
So the drain is not being taken away. So under this report, we are gonna put a new drain in closer to the property line, so that we can get a bigger building envelope. And that's more important along Main Street because the lots are narrower. Mr. Baines is saying he doesn't need to move it. If Mr. Baines, like if he didn't need it before, we wouldn't have even had the report authored because we're not taking, they're gonna keep exactly what they have. The only difference is along the King Street section, when we take the old drain out to move it for the development, we put a bigger drain in, a newer drain, right? So it conveys a bit better water, but still the upper beyond the development, the first 4 lots, you're gonna have the existing conditions that you've always had. So they haven't lost their right for drainage on this under the Somerville drain or the Somerville branch drain. Mr. Baines just isn't gonna touch it, and it's gonna be offset from the rear yard. I'm gonna say somewhere between 5 and 6 meters off the backyard, I think it is. Where we were trying to push it closer to the property line, basically under the center of the berm is where we were gonna put it. Now it's probably at the toe of the slope of the berm on the inside lot, but it doesn't affect how they drain. Other than they would have got a newer drain at no cost. If the drain in the future has to be replaced, like it would have been if Mr. Baines didn't develop and it plugged up because of trees and stuff, they'll be assessed now in the future, if it gets replaced.
And just to follow up, so the property that are more east though, that are experiencing flooding on Egremont and have been, is a theory that with these new properties draining to the front line to go into the stormwater, are they still getting that easing of the flooding they're having right now, whether it's coming from right now or not? Because once this development is made, those lots that are further east on Egremont who are having flooding, that once it's developed, that water is now coming forward, is that still gonna protect the existing property owner on Egremont?
Yeah, like, well, what happens is they're gonna be changing the entire drainage in like right now, the water sheet flows over there. Once the development goes, it can't sheet flow anymore. It's done. So really, you've got the Baines developing their lot, and again, they're bringing their rear yard. So from the toe of the slope, the berm, back to their road and then into the stormwater management facility. So what used to sheet flow across and collect is now going to get captured into the stormwater management pond. And yeah, so there's obviously not going to be the surface flow won't be there anymore.
Okay, I just wanted that clarification. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I know I know Mr. Melu and Mr. Baston, you had some concerns, but because we're going to be deferring it back, I'm not sure that your concerns at this meeting. I think 4 years, Mr. Melu, is at the price one for the
Concerns what was just said here for Mr. Baines. And my concern, can I stand?
Yes, yeah. And please identify yourself for the record. So we all know.
Yeah, my name's Craig Mayu. I'm at 6820 King Street. Where the Somerville drain comes, it comes from the east to the back of my property and to the south, and it all comes into that area there. Mr. Baines said there was no problem the other night, but he wasn't out at 4 o'clock in the morning watching the water 2 inches from the berm coming over. Every time that there's a flood back there, there's a drain just off of Mr. Baines' property where the roadway is. Glen Abbey, I think the new roadway is going in there. Yeah, Kawartha, I'm sorry. The Kawartha. Well, all through the years, when it's heavy rain, everything congregates there. There's a big catch basin there. And I'm out there during the middle of the night, pulling the stuff off the drain so that nobody gets flooded. So I do have a concern about what we talked about here. I'm saying that there is a problem back there. And my other concern was that I was never hooked up to the Somerville line drain. I've never had a drain there. I never used it. I've taken care of my own water problems. And now all of a sudden, from what I understand, that if this thing gets deferred or whatever, about a hookup. I paid for a hookup, but was never allowed to go and put the hookup in. Because when I did go to council, not council, I went and seen the person in charge at the time. He told me that I had to go, I couldn't hook up to the Somerville drain, even though that I paid for a hookup. I had to run 185 feet from the back of my property out to King Street to the drain. So all these years I've been sitting there doing all this stuff. I paid for hookups, and now all of a sudden now you're saying that I'm going to have to pay for a hookup to Mr. Baines' drain, I don't think that's fair at all, because I've already paid for it. And second of all, I know this isn't the meeting to talk about it, but I was assessed the highest out of anybody on the property, and my back property is the same width as most of the properties. Just because my frontage is a little bit bigger, saying that I'm going to benefit more. I don't see that, because I'm paying the same amount, or I'm paying more than what the property is back there. Like I'm being assessed at 8.7. So I'm asking council, if this thing does go through, I'm asking council, and I've been told that council can give me a better rate on 8.7. But under the Drainage Act, they had to do what they had to do, and I understand that. But I'm just asking, for all these years that I've looked after stuff, and at nighttime, I've gone out and taken care of drains so people wouldn't flood. Now I'm being assessed like 8.7, the highest of any of the property owners there, and I've still got the baggage. So I'm going to leave that with you, and what I'm going to say that the main reason I came to this meeting is I was under the impression that if I didn't show up at this meeting, then I wouldn't have a say at the next meeting. So I'm here saying that whenever this comes about, I want to come back and have the rights to speak. All right, that's all I'm asking.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You're always welcome.
Thanks.
That's it.
Can I speak?
Okay.
First of all, I don't like your sweater.
Personal thing, Mr. You have 2 minutes as well, Mr.
Okay, yeah, only take 2 minutes. First of all, I have no issues with the Somerville drain. What I have an issue with, and my magnifying glass picked it up on one of the drawings, was a proposed sidewalk that's going to run with about that close to my fence, 200 feet long. We've had numerous meetings over the last 8 years with the people on King Street. And we already decided, I don't know how many times, that first of all, we didn't want streetlights when we did all the property along the front on King Street. Second of all, we didn't want sidewalks. And last but not least, we didn't want lights. So now all of a sudden, I happen to, with my magnifying glass, I see a little note on this one drawing that says proposed sidewalk. Now the proposed sidewalk, and I don't know if you people have been around King Street. I just kicked out $30,000 to put a fence up around my property because I call it the Berlin Wall. And I don't want a sidewalk running right beside my property, 1.5 feet. That's how close it's going to be. You know what's going to happen to my fence? I can tell you, you all know what's going to happen to my fence. I'm going to have spray paint. I'm going to have murals. I'm going to have, you name it, it'll be on there because I see what goes on in that vacant lot every day. I have cameras that point out there every day. You would be very surprised what goes on in that vacant lot at 3:30 in the morning. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, the second thing is you're going to take a noisy drain that sits right in the front of Kawartha Drive. You want to shove it over towards the front of my place. Have you ever heard that drain at night when there's a heavy storm or in the morning? It sounds like Niagara Falls rolling down through there. You know, like I'd like to go to bed at night, at least have my window open. Like there's no way. All you hear is water roaring down through there, especially if the east side of that berm is full of water because it is just rolling. And like I said, I've gone out with Craig with a pair of chest waders on and my rake, and I clean that drain out because every corn stalks, whatever's out there, weeds, it all congregates and it starts to plug the drain off. But I don't think it's my responsibility to look after that. But anyways, that was my 2 issues. First of all, I think putting a sidewalk there is detrimental to my property and detrimental to my fence that I didn't have the money to pay for, but I did anyway. And also, I think it devaluates my house and my property by putting a big catch basin that is sitting on Kawartha, which is, and I understand you gotta move it because it's gonna be in the middle of the roadway, but you don't have to move it all the way over. I think the reason why they're moving it all the way over is because of the proposed sidewalk. They want to run out to King Street, and the sidewalk isn't gonna do anything. Like, who's gonna use the sidewalk? Not the kids. I can tell you right now, I watch them every day. They come down King Street out of the Maples. And they bore hog it right down across the street onto the new sidewalk, and they go to the school. The people that's gonna be in his subdivision, they're gonna go out that little piece of property there. That he set aside for the kids to go across to the school. So, like, I don't understand what the reasoning is behind wanting to put a sidewalk there. It makes no sense.
I don't want sidewalk either.
Well, there you go.
I think the sidewalk that's discussed under the agreement, so.
Okay.
You were 1 minute over.
Well, I got kind of winded there, didn't I?
It's with you.
Anyways, I'll call you again.
Well, thank you.
Anyways, thanks for listening.
You're welcome. All right, council, we have a motion by Councilor Rodriguez, seconded by Councilor Bojan, that the report by M. Garrett's Consulting Incorporated dated August 11th, 2023 regarding the Somerville Drain Improvements 2023 be referred back to the engineer for design revisions. All those in favor? Carried. And I have a motion by Councilor Bojan, seconded by Councilor Rodriguez, that the consideration meeting for the Somerville Drain Improvements 2023 be adjourned. All those in favor? Carried. Yes. Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Michael. Good evening, Mr. Guys.
Good night, thank you.
I'm going with these guys.
Yeah, go, you guys go up making a bite. Maybe with any luck, you won't have to build a subdivision. We're going out.
I mean, I'll grab them. Yes.
Okay, I apologize for the lateness of this next one. So we're gonna do a consideration meeting for the Canton Drain. Council, once again, I will advise you, if you have a declaration of pecuniary interest, declare it at the proper time. Purpose of the consideration meeting is to discuss the proposed works and technical aspects of the Drainage Act dated the drainage report dated August 2nd, 2023 for the Canton Drain. If there are assessment concerns, again, I would remind you, they are taken up at the Court of Revision. I think we know everybody here. This is our third time through. We have Councilor Willett, Councilor Van Claveren, Mayor McEwen, Councilor Rodriguez, Councilor Bojan, as well as our Drainage and Engineering Coordinator, Elizabeth Cumming, the Drainage Clerk, Jessica Wilson. Our engineer on this project is Mr. Josh Warner of Ardovan Engineering. Welcome, Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, at this time, I would ask if you could give us a update on the status of your report, please.
Thank you. So through the mayor, I'll give a brief overview of the report, and then I'll also comments from the legislators and council. So the Canton Drain report has been prepared under section 78 of the Drainage Act to address flooding issues in the area. Following an on-site meeting and investigation, we determined that the pond on the property with roll number 10-335, the grade line on the drain from the existing culverts, are impeding the flow of the drain, and therefore improvements are recommended. The existing grade line for almost 900 meters upstream of the pond is almost flat. The channel is full of brush and sediment. The culvert is well above the grade line of the ditch. All of the culverts are undersized, and there is erosion immediately down from the pond. Therefore, through this report, I've recommended improvement of the channel portion of the Canton Drain from just downstream of the pond to the top end. This includes the deepening and widening of the channel in order to grade line of 0.08% upstream of the pond. I recommended the replacement of culvert number 1, which would serve as an outlet for the pond. And culvert number 2, so in future specifications for the replacement of culvert number 3, so removal at culverts at station 0 + 317 and 1 + 155. The current bylaw from 1976 does not allow for maintenance and drain downstream of the pond. So it is also therefore proposed to extend the Canton drain to the McAndrew drain to allow for future maintenance of the channel or removal of beaver dams. So the total estimated cost for the project is $167,283. The report also includes a detailed breakdown of allowances, assessments, provisions for maintenance, working areas, drawings, and specifications. At this point, I'm available for any comments or questions from council or landowners.
All right, thank you, Mr. Warren. A little shorter than Mr. Garrett. The clerk, I know that we've received several pieces of correspondence. I know Emily had provided council a letter. Dan, do you want to speak on that or that letter? Because I have another one as well. It's open to you, whatever you'd like to do.
Is it going to make a difference? I don't know.
Anything you say.
But I put it just in a nutshell there in that letter already, so. There's not a whole lot else to say. Right at the moment, since there has been a little bit of work done on that property. Where the outlet is. That the property owners have asked someone to come in and remove the dams and clear it up a bit, and we have not had an issue even with the heavy rain. We've had a lot of rain, as everybody knows, and everyone has stated the same thing that it's flowing nicely. As it has. Aside from that issue we had with all those dams back then, so.
Okay. And if you feel you want to say something else further on, well, you're more than welcome. Okay. Now, we also received a request to speak from Lou Ann.
Yeah, I'm just in agreement with what Emily just said as well. That we have had some problems over the last few years. But right now, everything does seem to be flowing. My biggest concern is the private ditch that is to the east side of my property. It's actually not on my property at all. My property runs right along the edge of it. But it's between myself and the White Trailer's property. And they're saying that eventually that would have to be made part of the drain system. And I have some huge issues with that becoming part of the drain system, because it's going to affect me dramatically. As we would then, because right now there is no maintenance being done to that ditch. It's a private ditch. If it becomes part of the drain system, then any maintenance done is going to be going to the homeowners. And that is running up like 600 feet of my property. So that's going to greatly affect me cost wise. Not to mention how we have a berm and everything running right up to the edge of that ditch. So yeah, if we can keep the beavers down where everything is flowing properly, then we don't have to worry about that.
You tell me the proper way to pronounce your last name, Lynn.
Venetili.
Thank you. We had some discussion on that. We want to make sure we had it right. Thank you. Okay, so that's so clerk, did we have anybody else that had sent anything in or any other correspondence that we received from anybody?
No, just Emily and Luann.
Okay.
So I guess like just one other thing that I'm just curious about is back in the 70s or whenever, when this ditch or when this drain was diverted to come up through Haney's property around their pond, and the outlet was then added to the property that I'm in. I've been at my property for almost 20 years now, and I didn't know any of this stuff. Except a few years ago, before Arnold Hoekstra retired, he had come out, I was having a discussion with him. And he had told me that, yes, that drain was put in, applied for and put in legitimately to be diverted to come up to K&E's property because they were using it for work purposes. But I said to him, you had it draining out, and the part of the drain on my side where it exits, it's only like 20 or 30 feet, perhaps. And I said to him, where did you think that water was going to go? When there's only 20 or 30 feet of ditch like that, I'm at the end of the ditch. And that is why they took it upon themselves to dig this private ditch going to the McAndrews drain on London Line. So that's why I have an issue, like this private ditch was put in to accommodate the water for K&E back in the 70s. And now coming up to the future, I'm going to have to bear the burden of that. When, if I had been living there 20 years ago, I would have just flat out said, no, you're not doing that. But I wasn't. So now I'm stuck with it. But I don't want to shoulder the burden of it now, because there was nothing, like that ditch doesn't even show on any of your maps as being there. It doesn't exist.
Fortunately, a lot of things happened back then, and we have to address it, that's for sure. We're gonna go to council. Any comments or questions, Dr. Bojan? You first.
I guess, I know you'd mentioned something about needing to extend something to be able to access Beaver Dam. So does work still need to be done to be able to accommodate? Like, the problem was solved because the dams are gone. There's still work that needs to be done to be able to do what you were talking about, is extending for access on the easement.
So through the mayor, yeah, so if there are beaver dams on Luann's property currently, because it's not a municipal drain, the township cannot gain access to that portion or remove those dams. It'd be her responsibility. And yeah, no work can be completed on that portion of the drain as of right now.
Of the drain itself?
On your property, yeah.
You mean, are we talking about that exit pipe that we had discussed already before?
So the portion of the drain, the pipe is incorporated, and then basically it's incorporated till it starts heading north. So from that point to the McAndrew is not a municipal drain.
That's right.
So then that portion would be all your responsibility. If there
Well,
was
it will be mine because it's not on my property. That's on Bill White's property.
Yeah.
So I don't think Bill is aware of any of this at all, because I wasn't until, I'm pretty sure that Bill doesn't realize that he'll be shouldering all that responsibility for that drain or for that ditch if it becomes a drain.
Yes. So it won't be just yours or his, it's the watershed as a whole. So the assessments reflect that there are other people utilizing that drain. So it wouldn't just be, if there was a beaver dam, say, in that section, it'd be assessed to the watershed as a whole.
Understand, but what I'm saying is right now, on my taxes or on anything, I don't pay anything for that private ditch. And if it becomes part of the drain system, it runs almost the full length of my property, which is, it's gonna be like over 600 feet that I will be paying 600 feet worth of maintenance. Right?
Yeah, like, so the work would get assessed out in accordance with the schedule of maintenance, so your percentage of that cost would be. So if there was $1,000 of maintenance done on that portion of the channel, your cost would be $51.
If it was $50,000 worth of maintenance done, because nothing's ever been done on it,
Yeah, so then it would be 50 times that.
that's what I'm saying. I can guarantee you, I'm gonna be paying like thousands of dollars, not $51.
Yeah, at this
Right.
point, I'm not sure. I mean,
Yeah.
like, there isn't any request to do any work on that section, so.
Yeah.
We would-
Yeah, so I'm just using that as an example, not to mention that we had discussed that I have a huge berm there with many mature trees that we planted in 20 years ago when we moved there. That you had said may have to come down for maintenance purposes, which I'm not in favor of at all, because why would I be? It's a private ditch that's not on my property.
Yeah, so through the act, we're responsible as part of a report obtaining a sufficient outlet. And well, if there's an outlet that cannot be maintained by the municipality, and I feel that it's not sufficient for the drain. For draining purposes, so in order to obtain that sufficient outlet, I feel that it needs to be extended directly to the.
I understand that. And 25 or 30 years ago, or whatever it was in the 70s. If somebody hadn't been assessing it properly, they would have said, you're putting this outlet drain in, and where do you think the water's gonna go? The ditch is only 20 feet long. So they allowed the ditch, the exit drain to be put in, knowing that it wasn't gonna go anywhere, and they allowed them to dig up a private drain, a private ditch to drain a drain. Right? And now, all these years later, you want me to just say, oh, okay, yeah, rip up my yard, tear down my trees, go ahead and tax me for all this stuff, which I had no control of in the 70s.
Yeah, I understand your frustration. Unfortunately, we deal with the situation that we're dealt with right now, and that's where the location of the drain in order to obtain a sufficient outlet.
Exactly, and that is why I had said, if K&E has no use for that ditch now, for that drain around their property, why is it not just disconnected back to how it was in the 70s and just disconnect it and let the water flow how it flowed before? Why does it still have to come up to maintain his pond that he has? Like, it's kind of silly.
Yeah, it's not just for the pond. I mean, if we would want, we can look at relocating it, but the point becomes that it doesn't benefit anybody upstream. So then if you're requesting it to get relocated, you'd be responsible for those costs to have it relocated.
Reconnect it back where it was disconnected or rerouted years back.
Yeah, so there's a ditch at the back of the Batty property, but it currently actually drains easterly. So I mean, that whole system would have to be reworked.
Yeah, that's something that we're just gonna have to look at, because like I said, I'm not in favor of rerouting a private drain to accommodate the drain that really should never have been put in the first place if it didn't have proper access back at the time. So it really shouldn't be my problem.
Councilor Bose, does that answer your
That
question?
was my question. Thank you.
Councilor Rodriguez, any questions?
Yes, thank you. So in the previous drain thing, he was speaking about a private drainage ditch alongside a, you know, we're talking one of the previous drains we just talked about, Mr. Garrett's. Yes. Mentioned how there was a private drainage ditch where some of the property owners were connected to. If they wanted to bring it into the new drain, they could. If not, they could stay with the private drain. Because you can't force them to go onto it because they have their own. And you don't have to maintain it, obviously, either, because it's private. Does that not apply here? And also, where is Candy or the property owner in all of this? Which this ditch was put in for to satisfy his property needs. Where is he?
So through
And
there.
what's his thoughts?
Yeah, so we've had some correspondence with their Edgewater construction now, just if you're looking at the landowner information. So we've had some correspondence with them. They aren't, I wouldn't say they're in favor of the proposed works, but they said if it's gonna go ahead and the upstream watershed is in favor of it, then we're fine proceeding. I'm not sure exactly where he's at this meeting, because yeah, I hate to speak on his behalf, but. And then in terms of the private, I think that's a little different scenario. This is more servicing an entire area. A lot of landowners don't have a direct connection to this private channel. It would just be the abutting landowners, and there's only Benetilly and then White property.
So they're the only benefiting properties.
Well, we're not benefiting.
What do you mean for drainage?
Yeah, the only abutting properties. I should say.
The only one benefiting is Edgewater Construction because it's their pond or their overflow of their drain is the same as what Mr. Mayhew had said, or I forget the other man's name that was speaking here. When we have those heavy rains like we just had, the water coming out of that drain pipe sounds like Niagara Falls, like the amount of water gushing out of there is torrential. And it just flows down this private ditch out to the McAndrews drain. Again, it makes me say, did they not know this back in the 70s when they approved this outlet to be put in? Where did they think the water was going to go at that time? It absolutely makes zero sense to me. So yeah, right now it's been a private ditch. It's been a private ditch since 1970, whatever it was. And now it's going to be made into part of the drain system. To accommodate Edgewater Construction, really.
Where does your water go?
My water? Well, I would drain onto, my property drains onto the McAndrews in the front of my property. My land is higher than the side private ditch, so I know I'm not draining over there. Plus I have a large berm that is separating the property. So I'm not draining into that private ditch. I'm draining to the front. But I will tell you that when that water is gushing down and it goes to the McAndrews drain in the front, my whole front of my property floods because my property in the front is lower than the road. So it's like this. So when that drain fills up, it floods into my front yard, which I never complain about because I don't care because there's nothing down there. My house is set farther back and there's nothing there, and it finally does just drain away. So I drain to the front. I don't drain to the side.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, I need a little clarification. This ditch that was put in by Edgewater or K&E at that time, whatever. It's private, or is it part of the drain system now? Or are you going to incorporate it as part of the drain system now?
Yeah, so there's a portion, so in 1976, there was a report that where they incorporated basically the rerouted drain. But downstream in 1976, downstream of the pond, they did not incorporate. So we are proposing to incorporate it to provide a solution outlet. Yes, now.
It's still private then.
Right now, yes.
So, yeah, I sort of can't help but agree with Natalie that why would she want to pay for that private drain? That's a benefit to Edgewater Construction.
Yeah,
Like, maybe I'm not understanding this, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
yeah, so through the mayor, so yes. So she's not paying for the incorporation of the channel. She's paying for a portion of the potential future maintenance. So the 5%. And we're looking to obtain a sufficient outlet, as I mentioned, for the upstream waters and to allow the town to maintain it to ensure no negative impact on the entire watershed.
And this was all started because of beaver dams. Is that correct?
That was the initial start.
Did somebody say they're all gone now?
Currently, I believe they are.
Currently there.
Beavers are still there, it's just their dams are no longer.
Yes, sir.
The beavers are 100% the problem. That's as soon as they were taken care of, the water flows. But I don't if you spend 170,000 on a new drain, what's gonna stop the beavers from, we single-handedly watched, I don't know how many there were, but they built a 20-foot wide dam overnight. Like the excavator, they cleaned it out. And I went back after work the following day at like 5:30 and it was 100% rebuilt. One day. So I don't see the benefit of, you could spend $1 million. If it's a ditch, they'll block it. And even they chew branches, they're just always chewing, even when they're not building dams, they're chewing. So then all the flow, like Sandy doesn't clean up anything, so it gets all grown in, and then heavy winds, it just all blows, and then when it flows after a heavy rain, it blocks the culverts, so it doesn't matter if you put a 48-inch culvert in. You know, they block it, so I think the beavers just need to be under control, and that takes care of all the problems.
For the record, you're Mr. O'Donnell.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I've had my questions answered. Thank you.
Like, I would rather just that ditch remain private. If there's a problem with it, then we can deal with it on that, at that time. I don't want it to be, I don't want to be held responsible or have any payment part of it if I don't have to.
Does that answer all your?
Oh, yes, it does. Yeah.
I gotta go to this route and I'll come back to you, Councillor Rodriguez, after. Councillor Van Claveren?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is K&E or Edgewater, do they have any personal responsibility to maintain this drain outside of like it works around their pond there is how I understand. Do they have some personal responsibility for maintenance, beaver control, anything like that?
So through the mayor, so currently they don't have any responsibility for downstream of the pond, up to the pond, and the pond are all incorporated, so they'd be responsible for a portion of the cost if the town was requested to do maintenance and in the removal of beavers from the pond upstream, but downstream they have no financial responsibility.
I guess my question was more so, do they have personal responsibility outside of just their cost? Do they need to look after that drain personally?
No.
Okay. Okay. So there obviously there's a conflict with the motivation in the 70s and the potential fear of the work that's going to be done in the future.
It's not a matter if you're saying that, like the fear, the point is really how it all started was the beavers were coming through this drain pipe into my yard and they were snacking on all my poplar trees. I lost like 30 poplar trees in like a 2 or 3 week time frame. And that's where we initially went to them and said, can you put a drain, like screenage or something on your side of this drain pipe to keep the beavers out from coming through to our yard? And they said, no, do it on your side. And I said, I can't do it on my side because the water's coming that way. If I put it on my side, I'm going to have a bunch of beaver corpses all dead or fish or whatever gets washed through there on that part of the screen. It has to be on that side to keep them from coming through. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer, well, I don't want to repeat what it was he told me, but it wasn't very nice. And that was how it all started, that I ended up having to call the town to come out about the beavers to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm. And so are we doing that? Is that our responsibility to remove the beavers? Okay.
Your mayor. We do take care of the beaver problem when we are told that there's a problem up there. So it is an ongoing thing. Absolutely, but when we're notified, we go back out and we do some more trapping and removal.
Emily, is there?
However, can I qualify that? We cannot do work on Lou Ann's property because that's not a municipal drain.
Okay.
So.
And all I wanted was the screen put on that side to keep it from coming over. Right? That was all I was really asking for.
Is something like that appropriate, Elizabeth?
You asked the owner?
I asked him originally, yes.
And it wouldn't be the owner that would be responsible, that would be the drain.
Right. And is that something we would do? is put some kind of a catch there.
I couldn't do that under maintenance, because that's making changes to the drain. I would have to do it under a drainage report.
So it's a possibility, possibly, like,
Yes, through
I
your,
don't,
it's an option.
if I can just, I don't think that would stop a beaver. They're quite apt at walking on land. They do like to swim, but if they want to go to something, they can waddle the way where they need to go.
That's it for me. Thank you.
Councillor Wolvet?
Quite an interesting discussion, to say the least. I know about beavers. I know very well about beavers. I have 125 acres full of them little rodents. But I think if they're a pest, they can be trapped and removed. And I don't think that's an expensive endeavor. But anyway, I guess the question I'll ask, because there's been a lot of discussion here. Can this be stopped? Take care of the beaver thing. If Edgewater Construction has an issue with drainage in their ditch, then let them deal with it.
through the mayor.
I understand that Mrs. Venatelli here, future clean out, if she's got to clean out 600 plus feet or whatever of that line, that can be very expensive. I certainly understand her position, also understand the drainage position, but can this be stopped? Try to control the beavers? Doesn't seem to be any issue with the flow of water now that their dams are cleared out.
Yeah, so through the mayor, yeah, it's certainly a possibility. I would potentially suggest that if the report gets referred back, we'd hold another meeting with all the landowners, and with that notice of the meeting, send out that we're want to discuss the possibility of not proceeding with the work. If all the landowners are satisfied, then basically the route forward would be I'd prepare a section 40 report that outlines that we're stopping the 78 request, 78 improvement to the drain, and we're basically abandoning it. The section 40 report would eventually go to council, or should go to council, and it would outline the who pays for the engineering costs to date. So there's approximately 23,000 engineering that would have to get assessed out to the watershed, and I'd be responsible for that if we proceeded with the section.
Who would be responsible for that?
Sorry, I'd be responsible for deciding how that's assessed out, and then it would come forward.
So I guess just the final question. So are the majority of your landowners here that I'm looking at, you're not, other than people here tonight, is that they're not opposing it?
Yeah, we haven't heard a whole lot from other landowners. There's been a few other landowners that have been present at the meetings, but I wouldn't say they were in favor or against it. They were just more asking questions.
Just finally, like I see the big benefit here, certainly to Edgewater Construction, huge benefit to them. They're a pretty big outfit. Surprised they can't clean their own drain out. They got probably enough equipment to dig your own ditch all the way across their property, but yeah, I understand the issue here. I just don't know. Is anybody being flooded out? Like, you know what I mean? We always have liability here that if we don't proceed under the Drainage Act and do it properly, we can be held liable if we just stop something dead in its tracks. So where do we stand there if we say stop it?
Yeah, through the mayor, my thought would be to do our due diligence and send out that notice, and then that's their opportunity. If somebody does have a concern, then that's the time to bring it up. I have been in touch with the farmer, so they own the two properties east of Edgewater Construction. He rents that to a tenant, so he wasn't sure whether there was issues on the drain. He was gonna reach out to his tenant, and they were potentially gonna come to this meeting, but obviously they didn't make it.
I don't know what else to say then.
Well, I guess before I go to Councillor Rodriguez for her second round of questioning, my concern number one is those farms. What's the status of there? Are they having problems there? We haven't heard anything obviously from them. But what's the condition of the drain, Mr. Warner?
Yeah.
You know, like, I just, as a question, what shape is it in?
Yeah, so the drain's definitely in poor condition. The grade line is virtually flat all the way upstream of the pond. The culverts are undersized. There's a couple, well, most of the culverts are completely underwater. So it's hard to investigate their actual condition. But it's overgrown brush, there's a significant amount of sediment. I believe it does need improvement, but I mean, if the watershed as a whole is against the project, and there's no concerns, I'd be willing to entertain not proceeding with any work.
Thank you.
Yeah, so if, just elaborate on that a little bit more. So if you go to drawing 3, so yeah, we can start at drawing 2, actually. The larger pages. Basically that shows the depth of the clean out. If you look at the hatched area, so there's almost 2 feet of sediment and material that's gonna be coming out. If we proceeded with what we have proposed here. That continues basically all the way along page 2, and then if you go to page 3, there's culvert number 2 along the left side. So that culvert is about a ½ meter higher than what it should be. It was obviously just rolled in the ditch. And it's significantly higher than the culvert upstream, so obviously there's issues there. Whether it's impacting the farming operation, I would assume it is, but unfortunately, there's no comments from those landowners.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Councilor Rodriguez, do you please?
Councilor Woolver had touched a lot on what I was gonna state, like, how do we, if nobody, the majority doesn't want any of this. Obviously explain that. And if the farmlands aren't reaching out, I mean, to me, if somebody was having a problem, they would respond. If they're not having a problem, they tend to ignore. So, I just believe that there's really not a big problem here. Despite how unpretty picture you're painting. It's Bentonelli. Did I say that? Bentonelli. It's like that she drains to the front to McNaught. McAndrew, I'll get all these same things right. And you're saying that she benefits from private drain.
Yeah, she is assessed a portion of the maintenance costs. I do believe that there is a low area, kind of maybe a third way from the road that would drains a lot of the majority of the Bentonelli property and then drains to the private ditch right now.
So the majority you believe drains to the private?
Then the majority of my property drains to the private drain?
Yeah, like there's a little swale about a third way up your property. There's a low area that you're talking about, and that would eventually go into the private drain.
It's possible. To my understanding, I drain to the front. I don't know why I would go to the side unless it's a little bit lower there.
Yeah.
When I see the flooding that I get, it's never from the side. The flooding I get is always in the front, close to it, like in front of my big shed. That's where all the water is in. That's where the water is. I don't see anything from a low side, water coming in on that side.
Okay, so my other, just last question was, because this is currently private, it was created by this. For their pond. And there is no responsibility because it's not through the municipal drainage act at this point. For the town to provide maintenance, correct? So if there were beavers or, that is the responsibility of the, I'm sorry, is it construction, Edgewater?
Well, like there was, when we did have the beaver problems, when they first came through the drain, they thought this little outlet area would be a fun little home for themselves. So they did build a dam in there. My husband dug it out himself. Like, so we did our own maintenance to it to get rid of their dam and stuff. And as they were coming back and taking more trees, we were cleaning it out. So as far as them being down into the private, ditch part, they have never been down in the front. They've never gotten that far because that's where they're blocking it off, is where this large, where the pipe comes out, where it's more of a round circular area, and they build their dam right at the edge. And it goes up and it makes this, they probably had that at one time, probably close to 20 feet deep at one part where they had it built up. My husband dug it out to drain, and then we've never had a problem with it draining down the private ditch.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that a little bit, and I guess it's a pretty important point. Like, if there is a dam in that section of the drain, nobody is required to remove it. So if it's on the white property, they can do whatever they want, where they can leave it, and it could negatively impact upstream lands. And then we'd likely be at this scenario where we'd be saying, hey, we need to incorporate this so that the town can have some enforceability to have those dams removed.
But have you even talked to Bill White and told him that you would be taking over that piece of his property? That was never.
I haven't had any correspondence with Mr. White.
I don't think he realizes that he'll be giving up a chunk of his property either as part of the drain system.
Yeah, he should have been, or he was invited to all the meetings. This would be the third.
Yes, I guess that's really my only concern, is that it's his land, his private drain. Where is he? To speak to it, but I do agree that because this is private, you may not be there forever, or. And who's gonna take care of these beavers, right? And they're gonna interrupt everything upstream and downstream, so for maintenance purposes, it kind of is a quandary to be in for sure.
Okay, any further discussion? I'm getting the feeling that we're leaning towards referral. Back to the engineer.
Yeah, I'd say so. There's a lot of missing links here, and well, what you just said, you haven't talked to Mr. White yet about his portion, even though it's private, but if you're going to bring him into the fold and be part of this drain, I think he needs to be certainly consulted to tell him what's going on. That's just one thing, but the rest of the people on the list, I don't know, maybe they all want it done. You know what I mean? Like you did part of it now, you spent $20-some thousand on engineering. So I just think we need some more information on this, and what you hear it around the table, the bit of confusion here about making any kind of a decision on it. So, and the farmers that are affected too, I know they're not attending here, but does that mean they agree or disagree? Or I guess normally we don't get letters, we assume they agree, right?
That's what you assume, whether that's the case or not.
So
Sorry, one other question that I would have is, what is the standard, like, do you have a standard size drain? Like when you are digging a drain or you're, doing something, do you have a standard size, like that you make them, 20 feet wide by so many feet deep? And
Yeah, through the mayor, and there isn't a standard size. It's something that we would have to determine based on surveys and the amount of water that's going to be flowing through it. Yeah, so I mean, the land in that location, because it outlets the McAndrew drain, is restricted, so it'd likely have to be wider and not as deep.
exactly, so you would be digging the ditch even wider than it is, and it's already probably at least 15, maybe close to 20 feet wide. Like, it's pretty wide now. And it's all full of, older trees, like along the edges. There's apple trees even there. Like, there's all this stuff. There's people that, animals live in there. There's turtles in there and fish in there and all kinds of stuff. And you're gonna just wipe it all out. I seen a guy on Michigan Road. I went to his house to buy something from him, and I seen the ditch that was carved out beside his laneway that he said was double the size of what it originally was, and it was like horrific. I wouldn't want that on my property or attaching to my property. Suddenly this big gaping hole where we have worked many years to build a privacy edge to the trailer park, which then is going to bring my property down, because when we bought our property, like I said, that drainage ditch was never mentioned. There was nothing ever there. It was like just a private ditch. And all of a sudden it's gonna be this big gaping hole down the whole side of my property, and I'm gonna have clear view for anybody who wants to buy my property, clear view of the trailer park next door, which that's not gonna be so nice either on a resale.
So Warner, one question, if we refer this back. How are the costs appropriated for what's already involved into this so far?
Yeah, so as through your mayor, the mayor, so the section 40 report, if we proceed with the section 40 report after a meeting with all the landowners, I'd be responsible for assessing out the engineer.
So there will be a cost.
Yeah, so the cost of the watershed will be approximately 23,000 in engineering to date. And exactly how that's broken up, I would have to determine that.
Councillor Bojan?
Yeah, I'm just gonna reiterate that there's gonna be, just because of the nature of the Drainage Act, there's gonna be costs here because the process has started. And we've gone this far. So I guess that's gonna be the biggest risk here is at the end of it, if it does get deferred back, property owners decide not to. $23,000 in engineering fees would still be portioned out, and we could be back here again in 5 to 10 years because the drain's in poor condition. And we have to restart $20,000 worth of engineering fees. I guess that's just the risk that we're facing here. Well,
So do we have to restart engineering fees if it's already laid out?
Yeah, I mean, it would depend, like if it's 10 years down the road, I would think that whoever gets appointed would probably want to restart. If it's next year, then you could likely utilize all the information that's existing. It just depends on when that happens.
But if you referred it, then you were gonna consult with the other landowners to see what the status is.
That's right, yeah.
Emily, you had,
Yeah, and I was just saying, as landowners, we just wanted the beaver issue under control. We didn't say, let's redo all this, like, we were just asking for beavers to be under control and trapped. So I'm just saying that was our only concern, and it was dealt with, and then all of a sudden there's an engineer and there's all this stuff, and I'm like, wow, we just asked for some beavers to be trapped. So.
Right, nobody was.
So now it's turned into this big thing where it's gotta come out of our pockets, and like even now we're at 20,000 so far, and it like, wow.
Yeah, if
Just
the
for asking for beavers.
the drain was on our property, I would have taken care of the beavers myself, but it's not allowed, so.
Right.
And Edgewater's so quite nice to deal with, so mildly. But that's the problem, like, I still think it's 100% beaver, so like no matter what you spend, what's the benefit? So you're saying worried about 10 years from now. Well, if the beavers don't get maintained under control, you can put the best drain in and it'll all be wrecked in 2 years. So it really doesn't matter what you do to the drain, the beavers can't live along it. That's what needs to be.
Start the process again though, right? Because the way the Drainage Act works. My example was 5, 10 years from now, someone might be having problems with their drain, they start this whole process again, someone in that watershed, and that's.
No, I totally understand, like, once you've started something, it's nice to
Yeah.
carry it through, I get it, I just say there's no guarantee. It doesn't control the beavers,
No, for
so
sure.
the watershed be
But,
great, but then the beavers come back, multiply, and like in 3 years, they can just make a mess, it's unreal.
A cost to the homeowners, I'm sure that they would rather be divvying up 23,000 than 178,000.
For sure, but just going back to my original, the only reason I brought that up is because anybody can start this process again. And if it comes up again in 5 years, we're gonna be dealing with the same problem again. That was just my point. It's just the risk of deferring it. That was just my point, is instead of our hands, if someone puts in starts the Drainage Act, it happens. By all means, I think we're in favor of deferring it.
or if the drain
Fails.
yeah, we're back at it again. With that, regardless of the whole situation, we have to address it at that time.
Yeah, that's just the only point I was making. Yeah.
Okay, let's move this along, council. We have a motion by Councillor Wolvette, seconded by Deputy Mayor McEwen, that the report by R. Dobbin Engineering Incorporated dated August 2nd, 2023 regarding the Canton drain be referred back to the engineer for consideration and consultation with affected landowners. Everybody clear on that motion? All those in favor? Carried. We have a motion by Deputy Mayor Phelan, seconded by Councillor Van Claveren, that the consideration meeting with Canton Drain be adjourned. All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, let's take a 15-minute personal break. Denny, can you cut us down for 15 minutes?
Wow.
And so that was like.
Okay, council, welcome back. Thank you to those that are watching. We were in camera for the drainage, sorry, we did some drainage work. That took us a little bit longer than what we expected. Council, I'm going to take you back to, we're on item 10. Do we have anything, clerk, on item 10? Correspondence?
Action required correspondence? No.
All right. Let's go to item 11, correspondence, recommended reading and routine approval information items. Motion by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Councillor Wolvett. Of course, correspondence items A to Q. A to Q, relating to recommended reading and routine approval and information items not otherwise addressed by resolution, be noted as received by the Plympton-Wyoming Council and filed accordingly. Beginning on my left, Councillor Wolvett, anything you'd like to address or indicate?
Just scrolling down to it here. No, I guess not. Unless we're reading something different. Nope, sorry.
Okay, Councillor Van Claveren.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Q, letter from Paul Lockdown. And so he's obviously quite concerned, and I just wondered, I'm not sure who I would direct the question to, maybe yourself, Denny. Is a stop or yield sign possible in that stretch?
I can give you an update on that before, maybe to assist your questioning, Councillor Van Claveren. When I received this from Mr. Ashdown, and I contacted him to ensure that he was okay with us going public with his letter, and he was. Most importantly, he said he feels that residents need to know what's going on there. He contacted Inspector Avery, and within 12 hours, I had a response back from him. They are upping the patrols from Mandamin to Lakeshore via through to Kamlaki. And I saw the memo that went out to the officers about that. And also there's other officers that come in to support them. They've been notified about it as well. They do have a couple ideas who are performing on the dirt bikes up there and going down the road on wheelies. And they are going to be increasing patrols. And they are concerned about it as well.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Fantastic.
I was very impressed. We got good response within hours on that. So.
And then Mr. Ashdown was responded to at that point.
Mr. Ashdown is aware of it and he appreciated that follow.
Easy, thanks.
Anything else?
Not for me, thank you, Sue.
Deputy? Councillor Rodriguez?
Thank you. I have F, G, Q, and P, and Q was dealt with, so.
Okay, let's go to item F first, the response re the intersection illumination.
Yes, so this, I just want a clarification, I guess, because this was before we went back and asked for the streetlights, like, because I reading in it that we still would like the street light there to be reconsidered, and then it says the response back was kind of vague on that.
It was rather a vague
Yeah.
response, and I had that one marked as well. Ms. Cummins, are you aware if Mr. Sabansky had any further conversation with Mr. Cole on that?
I'm not aware, but I can check into it. And Mr. Sabansky can likely get back to you.
Okay, I think we should have some follow-up on that. Was that good news to you, Ms. Rodriguez, that we do? I'm not happy with that response.
No, because it would appear that they approved the lighting illumination of the intersection, but I think they're really referring to the construction. What do you call those
The
things?
cones,
Cones that had, of the 6 had 2 working lights. And now I think we're only down to about a couple left there that don't even have lights. I think they're all on Lakeshore Road now.
so I think, clerk, can we have and Ms. Rodriguez's request to have that pulled out and get some further information on it, and probably would you concur, Ms. Rodriguez, that we have communication with the county on that further? Council, are we okay on that?
That's the one I meant to bring up too.
I figured you would. Council.
Yeah, I missed it. I was just signing on, but yeah, the second request, remember Adam was
Yes.
at them. I think this is the early one. I think they just dead ended us on the second. I think this is coming from the first one.
I think it's the second one.
I think it is.
If I may,
Yes.
I think the way I read it, I think originally it was decided back in July that they would just accept our letter and file it, AKA do nothing. I don't know, by the sounds of it, staff didn't go back to county council. Staff just referred back to the original decision. I think that's what's happened here. So staff have just blocked it based on the previous decision. Well, we went back to them,
County staff.
county staff. Clare County.
I'm sensing that may have came out of the AM meeting, but I'm not sure because I don't remember it happening at PM that
Yeah, I said, because they're referring to the July 5th AM meeting, which would have been a decision we were asking them to reconsider.
Right.
And then staff didn't bring it back to county council. Lampton County staff just reiterated the decisions already made. I think that's what's happened here.
Right. So that's what I'd like to see, some better communication. Clarification of.
Yeah, but
That's-
regardless of the construction on Lake Shore Road, they still need a light at that corner. That is a very dangerous intersection.
Okay.
So the
Next one.
next one was G,
The item G, yes.
County of Lambton applications being accepted for affordable housing seed funding program. I just think I just wanted to give it some acknowledgement for being addressing affordable housing.
Okay.
And then P is again, we've seen these in previous recommended readings. Strengthen municipal codes of conduct. We were all at the AMO and the Ministers Forum. I think that one received a large amount of attention from the crowd, the most attention and support in the crowd there to get the ministers to act on this issue. So I just wanted to bring that. That's all.
Okay. Councilor Bojan?
I had nothing in addition to that stuff. Thank you.
The only ones I had, I wanted to recognize the Historical Society and Councillor Van Claveren did that. I, in the past, have attended downriver and always a great presentation down there, so. That was good. Farm safety, thank you, Councillor Wolvet, for being at that. That's all that I have, so clerk. Nothing real other than that one for, we need to.
Did you, P, did you want
It was a resolution.
to support the resolution? Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can't have. it open. Is there someone that would like to second that motion?
There's a seconder for that motion of Councillor Rodriguez. Councillor Van Claveren.
I just need to amend that one.
Okay, a motion by Councillor Van Claveren, seconded by Councillor Wolvet. Correspondence items A to Q relating to recommended reading and routine approval and information items not otherwise addressed by resolution be noted as received by the Plympton-Wyoming Council and filed accordingly, save and accept for item P. For the motion, all those in favor? Motion's carried. A motion by Councilor Rodriguez, seconded by Councilor Van Claveren, that council support correspondence. Item P, as in Peter, in the city of Stratford regarding strengthening municipal codes of conduct. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, council, new business, Councilor Bojan,
No, I think I talked about enough tonight. Thank you.
and you did really well. Councilor Rodriguez,
No,
okay, Deputy Mayor, Councilor Van Claveren,
Nothing for me, sir.
Councilor Wilbet.
Sure.
Wow. The only thing I have is on the 5th of September, our award-winning newspaper, local newspaper, is celebrating 10 years in business. And we certainly wish Mrs. Wright the very best, and congratulations to her on that. So that's all we have under new business. Next we're going to be going into a closed meeting session. We have a motion on that. Motion by Deputy Mayor McEwen, seconded by Councilor Bojan, that council move into an in-camera meeting of council pursuant to section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001, as amended for the following reasons. Item A, personal matters. Section 239, bracket 2, bracket B, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. All those in favor? Carried. For those that are joining us live and virtually, we thank you very much for your attendance at this time.